Hey, everybody. Welcome. I am so glad that you are here tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night chat. Let's go.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to be here with all of you tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night chat. It's February 13th. I'm here in my lovely Brooklyn apartment, just a little after 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to follow our usual format tonight, which is first I give my opening remarks, and then from there we do a roll call. And then for the rest of the night, I answer your questions. Any questions that you might have, send as Rumble Rants, as Cash App. You can Cash App me at Caleb Maupin 22. But the best way, the absolute best way to send questions is to go to buymeacoffee.com and Caleb Maupin and send it that way. You can talk as long as you want, no limit. On top of that, you can be anonymous if you want. It'll just say someone. It's a great vehicle for asking questions. So if you got a question for me, by all means, send it via Buy Me a Coffee. It's a great application, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. That's the way we do things here. So if you got questions for the second half of the show, do it that way. In terms of announcements, I do have a new book out. It just came out yesterday. It's called Mystical Stalinism. You can go to your local bookstore and just tell them the name and author. It's got expanded distribution. Or you can go order it, dropping the link in the chat right here. You can order it right here. So, do what you got to do. I'm glad it's out. People are intrigued by it. I don't think anyone's read it completely. I plan to read it on this stream as an audio book so that it can be on the channel. So if you stick around, you'll get to hear the book because I will read it out loud. I think it's a good piece. So there's that. The Center for Political Innovation is the organization that I have established. And that we're doing great work. And our national convention is going to be on August 15th in the Chicago area. We're having the 7-day program this summer, August 12th to August 19th. So for CPI members or people that want to be involved, come to the convention. If you join CPI, you can come to our 7-day workshop and join CPI. We always need more members. Join the Center for Political Innovation. Go to our website down there, CPI. USA.org. It's a great organization. So on that note, as I said before, I'll be using our usual format here, just given the opening remarks and then the roll call, and then I answer questions. The second half of the show is all you. It's all you. It's all you guys, and I answer people's questions, and you guys ask the good questions, and I answer the good questions. So yeah, Rumble Rants, Cash App, Caleb Maupin 22, but the best way is to go to buymeacoffee.com. That's the best way to do it. So living biologically, that is a phrase which I guess I invented. I did not realize I invented it because I thought I had gotten it from somewhere else. But then I looked at the source of the comment where I thought I'd gotten it from, and I realized they had worded it slightly differently. But it's a perfect expression of what we're trying to escape on a personal and individual level. What is living biologically? Some people look at that and they're like, what? They're like, what? Is Caleb into organic chemistry? Like, is Caleb, some kind of physiologist or something? What is living biologically is? What is this? The hard sciences? Well, what we mean by living biologically is that human beings are capable of both being alive in the spiritual sense as well as the biological sense. And that much of society in our time, I would argue, has been reduced to only living in the biological sense. And many people find that highly unfulfilling. When we talk about living in the biological sense, life has a biological definition. Plants are alive. Trees are alive. Weeds are alive. Roses are alive. Insects are alive. Ants are alive. Insects are living. Flies. Mammals are alive. Dogs are alive. Cats are alive. Donkeys are alive. Camels are alive. Horses are alive. But none of them are alive in the same way that a human is. None of them. None of these other forms of life ever stop and say, why am I here? And none of them ever grasp and wrangle with big questions. And when it really gets down to it, none of these other life forms go beyond responding to stimuli, right? If something is painful, you avoid it. If something is pleasurable, you seek it. And that's what the entities in this world that are simply living biologically do, is they seek pleasure, they avoid pain, and that is their existence. And their existence is almost predetermined. They have so little agency that they almost exist in the same way that the waves on the ocean exist. You know, there's a wave in the ocean. It goes in, it goes out. The wave doesn't stop and go, should I go in or out? No, it just goes in and out, right? And that, you look at the way ants live, and you look at the way trees live. I mean, they're more or less like the wave on the ocean. They just go. They don't exercise any agency or make any decision. However, human beings are different. And the evidence that human beings are different and not simply living in the biological sense is that we force the environment to serve us. Frederick Engels, in his essay on the role played by labor in the transition from ape to man, he talked about how all other species simply interact with their environment, but man masters the environment and forces the environment to serve him. And it is this final distinction that separates man from other species. Man forces the environment to serve him with his labor power and with his creativity. And in fact, human beings are constantly reinventing the way we interact with nature. Ants have been making their ant farms the same way for thousands of years. Beavers have been making their beaver dams the same way for thousands of years. Bees have been growing their beehives and making their beehives the same way for thousands of years. But human beings have the ability to take their environment and reinvent it force it to serve them, and reinvent it. And the history of humanity has been going from one mode of production to another, going from one energy source to another, increasing our population, increasing our life expectancy, increasing the level of comfort in life, and learning to interact with our environment in a more efficient way. We've gone from burning wood to burning coal to burning petroleum, gasoline, and now nuclear power has emerged, and fusion could be next, right? We've gone from hunter-gatherer civilization to slavery, to feudalism, to industrial capitalism. And now we're seeing the rise of a more planned economy emerging around the world, in parts of the world that have broken out of the monopolistic capitalism of the West. And that human beings are constantly looking at the world around them and saying, how can we do better? Asking big questions, learning about how the world works, and innovating and reinventing their relationship with nature. And that's what it really means to be human. However, we live in an era where the people at the top have decided game over. The people at the top of the world have decided that for the sake of them being at the top forever, human progress must end. It's like a game of King of the Mountain. They're at the top and they've declared game over. Because if humanity continues to rise and innovate, which we will, that means they'll be displaced. And the people at the top of the world right now are oil monopolists, oil bankers, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, the Carnegies. The people at the top of the world right now are the tech monopolies, Bill Gates, the Apple billionaires, the Silicon Valley elite. People at the top of the world are the Anglo-American establishment, the old colonial money, the ultra-rich, and they're at the top of the world. And they're at the top of the world because they dominate a global system of free trade, banking, and control of the international oil markets. Oil is the main way they've cornered their monopoly. Oil is the most important commodity in the world today, and most of it they control, right? The oil in America is in their hands. The oil in Nigeria is in their hands. The oil in Saudi Arabia is more or less in their hands. They do have to negotiate with the monarchy. The oil in Britain, the oil in Norway and Denmark is in their hands. They have their dominance over the world. And because they have their dominance over the world, they dominate the international oil markets. They dominate the international banking system. They dominate the global economy. They are determined to stop countries around the world that have broken out of their domination. Countries like China, like Russia, like Venezuela, like Iran, like Nicaragua, like the Union of Sahel States, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso on the African continent. They're determined to keep those countries under their grip and to beat down those countries because they don't want to be displaced. And if human progress continues, and if human beings continue to do what we naturally do very well, innovate, create, reinvent our relationship with nature, we're going to get beyond oil as the main energy source. We're going to get beyond a world that's centered around Wall Street and London. And we're going to move toward a world where the human population is greatly expanded, the life expectancy is greatly expanded, and they're no longer secure in their monopoly. We will move from a unipolar world to a multipolar world. We will move from a world that is centered around a mighty city, and we'll move toward a world that is centered around civilization on the land and governments that encourage development upon the land, not a global economy ruled by those who control the trade routes, but rather a global economy that is dominated by development upon the land, and not a sea-based thalassocracy, but a telerocracy, and a land-based civilization focused on development rather than a sea-based civilization based on military force controlling trade. That is the inevitable direction that humanity is moving at this time. And it means they're out of luck. It means they don't get to be the boss anymore. It means they don't get to maintain their dominance. And so the leaders of the Western system have determined that the only hope they have is to reduce humanity overall to a biological existence. They are openly talking about depopulation. They're openly saying that there are too many people in the world. They are openly talking about creating some kind of dystopian future where we are controlled through our phones and dazzled into compliance, where we own nothing and are happy about it, and we live in a pod and we eat bugs. They are openly talking out various dystopian scenarios for a high-tech dark ages because that's the only way they can stay at the top, because their rule is at odds with human progress. Human progress will continue, but their rule will not. And as a result of that, they would like to reduce us to being rats in a maze. They would like us to be reduced to living biologically. And humanity will not accept that. And that is the conflict that is going on. And many people, on an individual level, very much let their lives be governed by others. I'm really into Wallace Wattles. Wallace Wattles is considered one of the most important thinkers of the New Thought and self-help movement. He was also a socialist, friend of Eugene Debs. He ran for office on a socialist platform. And on top of that, he was also a Christian. And he wrote 2 books about Jesus Christ and Jesus' teachings, Wallace D. Wattles. And I'm actually going to read to you one of my favorite passages from a Wallace Wattles book, because it's very, very relevant to this whole question of living biologically. It really just gets to the essence of what we're talking about. So here, I'll put it on. All right, I'll read to you the quotation because it really gets to the essence of it. Hold your horses. Just got to find the text here. Here we go. Pulling up the quote. Okay. Well, this is in the public domain, but I'm having trouble finding the text. But here we go. Here we go. Or not. Okay. Here we go. All right. Very good. I'll read you this quote. This kind of summarizes what I'm getting at about living biologically. Let me just find the quotation that I'm looking for. It's a good one. Thank you for being patient with me here on Friday night, everybody. I do appreciate it. Some nights I get on here all fired up about politics. Other nights I get on here talking about vampire movies. Other nights I get on here talking about who knows what. But tonight I decided to get on here and talk about living biologically and what I have come to understand about what it means to be human. And, that's what I'm on here to talk about tonight. And so I appreciate you being patient as I pull up the quotation. Wow, it is just not being helpful here. I don't know why. Okay. Here we go. Thanks for your patience. Here we go. All right. Here we go. There are two mental attitudes a man may take. One makes him like a football. It has resilience and it reacts strongly when force is applied to it, but it originates nothing. It never acts of itself. There is no power within it. Men of this type are controlled by circumstances and environment. Their destinies are decided by things external to themselves. The principle of power within them is never really active at all. They never speak or act from within. The other attitude makes man like a flowing spring. Power comes from the center of him. He has within him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. He radiates force. He is felt by his environment. The principle of power in him has him in constant action. He is self-active. He hath life within himself. All right? So do you want to be a football and live biologically, or do you want to be a flowing spring with life flowing out of you? Well, if you're capable of being happy living biologically, then that's what you should be doing. But for those of us who are not happy, because there are many people nowadays that are not happy, they are looking for more meaning in life. The way to find that is to stop living biologically, stop being a football, and start being a flowing spring. So many people are unhappy with their lives because they are simply going through the motions. They do this, they do that, and they feel a certain way. And this thing, I must say, and the way we're all plugged in is a really, really effective mechanism for reducing people to a biological existence. All right? They talk about how your phone can tell your mood. They talk about how your phone and the algorithms can impact your mood. And the forces of evil know what they're doing. And part of reducing people to being in a state of being without agency, without power, is subjecting them to this 24-hour social engineering operation, money-making operation, also called the algorithm. And part of awakening and taking on a human existence is making a dramatic decision and saying, I am going to take control of my life. And in order to take control of my life, I'm going to take control of my mind. I am going to see what I choose to see. I am going to think about what I choose to think about. I am going to engage with the ideas that I choose to engage with. I'm not just going to look at whatever my phone shows me. I'm not going to feel just however the world around me has decided I am to feel. I am not going to act and understand the world the way everything around me, everything being pumped at me tells me to. I will make a conscious decision. For a long time, I told people to get out of their bubble. I don't say that anymore. I say make your own bubble. You're going to be in a bubble one way or another. You can't see everything in the world, but you have to decide what your bubble is. You have to say, my bubble is going to consist of this. I am going to try and feel this way. I am going to listen to this reality. I'm going to learn about this. I am going to engage with this. You have to pick your own bubble, and you have to do it consciously. You can't let the algorithm decide for you. You can't let Satan make your bubble for you. You must decide your own bubble. And it's funny because people hear this and they say, Caleb, this is cult brainwashing. Caleb, this is authoritarianism. No, you are the boss. Authoritarianism is somebody else is the boss. And if you let them run your life, you're letting them be the boss. I'm telling you, you can make the decision. How is that authoritarian? That's the ultimate freedom. I'm telling you that you should consciously decide what you listen to, consciously decide what you watch, consciously decide how it is that you are going to be made to feel, consciously decide what to learn about and what to think about, consciously decide what your life goals are. I am telling you to take control of your own life. I am telling you to exercise the ultimate freedom. But that means not letting them drive. And whenever they don't get to be the boss, it's totalitarianism. And that's how these things work, right? They rule by default, right? For example, great example. I read an article in the Wall Street Journal a few years ago about the concept of, it called it democratic regression. And it gave the example of Russia and Venezuela as two countries that experienced democratic regression. What is democratic regression, according to this academic quoted in the Wall Street Journal? Well, according to them, democratic regression is when a society that is open and democratic through voting becomes a dictatorship and authoritarian. And I thought, wait a second, hold up. If you vote for it, how is that dictatorship? And the article went on to explain. It said in Venezuela, they had a free election and they voted for Hugo Chavez. And Hugo Chavez got elected, and he then tampered with the independent institutions, such as the economy, the police, the military, the media. And the independent institutions of Venezuela were changed by the elected leader. So it was no longer democracy. And I thought about it and I said, wait a second. So they voted for him to change society. He got into office, he changed society, and that's dictatorship. And they said, yes, but it's because the independent institutions were tampered with. Well, they weren't independent institutions. The military of Venezuela used to take orders from the American military. The economy of Venezuela used to be controlled by American oil companies. Venezuela in the 1990s had huge austerity because the International Monetary Fund would tell them every year, if you want to get more loans, you've got to privatize this and you've got to lay off this many people. It wasn't independent before. They were just in charge. But then when Venezuela elected a leader who started to change that and said, well, no, the Venezuelan military is going to get trained in Cuba. And no, we're going to nationalize and use the oil to benefit Venezuela. Well, then it's authoritarianism. It's dictatorship because they don't rule by default. Right? And Russia was a similar thing. In the 1990s, according to this article, Russia was a free and open society. That's interesting. I mean, mass hunger, the population was decreasing. I think they lost roughly 10% of their population in the 1990s. Mass unemployment, like 30% unemployment, but it was a free and open society. Okay. But then they had a fair and democratic election. Putin was elected. But then when he got elected, he changed society. Well, that's why the people voted for him. They wanted him to change society, but he changed society. And suddenly these independent institutions, like Russia's oil and gas, like the security services, like the military, he took control of them. And they were just independent before, when British Petroleum was looting Russia's oil and oligarchs were, getting state industries, that was independent. But then Putin created Gazprom and Rosneft, and all of a sudden it's authoritarianism, right? And the security services in Russia were, at that point under Putin's leadership, were working very, very hard to stabilize the country and not let the oligarchs. Well, that's authoritarianism, right? And you look at it, it's authoritarianism when they don't get to be in charge. And the most blatant example of that is, I'm telling you here, take control of your own life. Decide what you will read. Decide what you will listen to. Decide what you want to think about. Decide what you want to feel. Make your own bubble and do so actively. And that's not authoritarianism. That is individual control of your life. But they'll tell you it's authoritarianism. They'll tell you it's a cult because what you're supposed to do is just sit back and let them drive. And when they drive, they're not driving. That's just the way it naturally is. They're not in charge or anything. The big tech monopolies that run everything, the big corporations that run the media, the foreign policy think tanks that make plans for World War III. No, they don't do anything. It just naturally happens. The way the world is, that's just how it is. Some people are rich and some people are poor. Some countries are impoverished and some countries are very, very wealthy. That's just how it is, right? And well, it's not just how it is. There are systems. There are realities. There are relationships. There is an economy. And that, no, things aren't just the way they are. We have rulers in this world. The international monopolies, the big banks and corporations that dominate the world, they rule. And in order to maintain their rule, they want to drive down the population and they want to shove the beauty of human creativity and the beauty of human intelligence back into the box. That's what they're trying to do. And I'm here to tell you that if you want to fulfill what it means to be human, you can't simply take on a biological existence, and that the Center for Political Innovation exists to awaken people and empower people to discover their humanness and question and join a movement of other people that are committed to building a world where human innovation and creativity is cultivated. And human beings as the source of all wealth, with our labor power and our innovation, that we're unleashed and we create a world that allows communities to flourish. We want a pro-humanity, pro-growth government, a government that breaks the power of these big monopolies and invests in the people and in the communities. We want a government of action that fights for working families. We want an anti-monopoly coalition. And that was a great thing. But it requires you to awaken. It's not something you're going to just naturally do. Maybe at some point, our movement will be big enough that people just kind of join it because it's there. But right now, getting involved in our organization and getting involved in the movement to free humanity from the rule of imperialist monopolies, well, that's a choice. It requires you to awaken and actively decide things. And I appreciate that you're here. That means you're capable of doing it. So I wanted to, for the remainder of my remarks, my opening remarks tonight, I wanted to go over some concepts I've talked about before a long time ago. It's been 3-4 years since I've talked about this concept on these streams. But, I wanted to revisit a concept that I spoke about a couple years ago. Before I do that, I'll remind you, if you have a question for the second half of the show, buy me a coffee is the best way to do it. Buy me a coffee/Caleb Maupin. You can also do the Rumble rants, or you can cash at me at Caleb Maupin 22. But about 3-4 years ago on this channel, I can't believe we're at over 1,000 live streams now. Isn't that wild? 1,000 live streams. Thank you all for being here and being part of this community. 1,000 live streams. That's great. Well, several hundred live streams ago, probably maybe over 500 live streams ago, I did a live stream where I talked about 4 forms of Satanism. And that was before I got too religious on these streams. I talked about 4 forms of Satanism. And it was interesting because Satanists got really angry about it. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Literal Satanist blogs were so angry about my thing. They wrote like whole screeds against it. No one got more offended by my stream about the 4 forms of Satanism than the Satanists. And I think generally, if you're offending the Satanists, that's generally a good thing. If people are self-proclaimed Satanists and you are offending them, that generally is a good thing. And so I just want to revisit the 4 forms of Satanism that I went over on this channel a long time ago. I argued that what we call Satanism, right? What you can call Satan has 4 incarnations, right? That every religion tends to talk about the other, right? You know, every religion talks about some kind of force for good, and then there's the opponent. And what does that mean? And I argue there are 4 expressions of the opponent that exist. And the first one is actually good. The first form of Satanism is healthy, you know, and that is the troubleshooter, the questioner, the critic, right? Nothing will be able to maintain its strength if it's never challenged. And this is something that I think Hegel talked about and other things. But, you know, if you were a really good basketball player, but there was never a team for you to play against that challenged you, you would lose your ability to be a good basketball player, right? If Michael Jordan, he was a really good basketball player, but then they made a rule from now on, he can only play basketball with kindergartners. Give it 4 or 5 years, Michael Jordan would suck at basketball because he was never challenged, right? Right? And that strength requires opposition. Your ideas are not going to be firm if you never have to defend them in an argument. You never have somebody say, well, I'm not sure about that. What about this? You need to be challenged. You need to be countered. You need somebody asking the tough questions. You need somebody who troubleshoots, somebody who says, wait, what about this? Someone who pokes holes in your argument. You need somebody who pushes back and challenges you. You need to be put into hard situations, right? And that is actually what the traditional Jewish teaching on Satan was, right? The book of Job in the Old Testament of the Bible tells the story of Satan not as this enemy of God, but rather as one of God's angels whose job it is to put you through hardship to test your loyalty to God. And the book of Job is, you know, Job is this very, very faithful, loyal man. And Satan, the angel, says, well, I don't know how faithful he is, God. Let me make his life very, very hard. And Job is subjected to a lot of hardship, and that is, you know, that is testing his loyalty, right? And that healthy Satanism, you need opposition. And this is, you can't have good without bad. You can't have light without dark. This is the unity of opposites in the Hegelian sense, right? You can't have, if there was no dark, there could be no light. If there was no tall, there could be no short, right? If there was no fat, there could be no skinny, right? That there are a lot of realities that define themselves by their opposite, by their opposite. And if you want to thrive, you need to be challenged. You need to face opposition. There is a contradictory nature to reality, right? And so to some degree, what you can call the enemy or the opponent or whatever is good for you. You should be thankful that you've been challenged. You should be thankful that you've had hardship in your life. You should be thankful for the person who pushed you to do more than you could. You should be thankful for the person who made you discover your own strength by having to push back against them. In some ways, facing an opponent, facing opposition, facing a challenge is really, really important in order to thrive. And so that's the healthy form of Satanism, right? That you need opposition, and opposition is vital for any organization, any movement, any individual, anything. In order to maintain its strength, must face opposition. So that's the first thing. There's the healthy form of Satanism. Then there's a second form of Satanism that exists. And this second form of Satanism is actually, it's interesting. A couple months ago, somebody in the audience, shout out to you, told me that there's actually a psychoanalytic term for this, counterwill. Right? And I called it adolescent Satanism, teenage Satanism, contrarianism, but there's actually a psychoanalytic term for it, which is counterwill, which is young people in particular, but everybody, when it really gets down to it, pushes back against restrictions that they are given, right? And that we are often attracted to things that we are told is bad, right? It's like the great example, right? If you put up a poster everywhere that says, don't think about polar bears, everyone's going to look at that poster and immediately think about polar bears. That's just how it works, right? When you see a poster that says don't think about polar bears, you go, I wonder what it is about polar bears they're telling me not to think about. And people then pull out polar bears, Google polar bears. That's just how it works, right? If you tell people not to do something, they want to do it. And this is a basic human behavior, but a lot of politics that is shitty is based on this kind of thinking, right? And unfortunately, communism in America attracts a lot of people for that reason. Communism is described as the devil, so you get a lot of people who want to be the devil because it's literal Satanism. Why do you think it is? Ozzy Osbourne and Slayer and these rock bands from the 70s and 80s had devil horns and 666 and all of that. What do you think that was about? Well, it was because all these teenagers who wanted to make their Christian or evangelical or conservative parents mad, they all looked into that, right? They all and that there's one element of Satanism, which is just contrarianism, adolescent rebellion, counterwill. And it's not good to indulge in that, right? We shouldn't be doing things just because it's deemed bad. And that you can't hold an organization together and you can't be a happy person, right? If you can't agree with anybody. And that yes, no one likes to be controlled. No one likes to be told what to do. And we all naturally push back against it. But if you overindulge that, it's going to be impossible to maintain friendships. It's going to be impossible for you to get anything done in this world, right? That part of what it means to be human is to learn to work with other people, learn to compromise with the world as it exists, and figure out how you can get what you want and the world or the other person or the environment can get what they want, right? And that this drive that seems to define a lot of people become overcome by this drive of no one will tell me what to do. No one will tell me what to do. I will think for myself. And a lot of people become overwhelmed by it, and it's a destructive force. Right? There's 3 or 4 people I have known over the years, and it would annoy me at the same time, but now I just kind of laugh about it. And it was when I was very, very intensely devoted to communism. There'd be people I would know, I would become friends with, and then I would randomly get a text from them one day. Just so you know, I don't agree with communism. I text them back. I didn't think you did. Don't worry. Well, yeah, but I think and what they're telling me is they are starting to agree with my ideas, but they have to protect themselves, right? They have to be independent, right? They can't possibly admit that anyone else taught them anything. And it's a young man problem more than anything. A lot of young men don't want anyone else to be their leader, don't want anyone else to tell them anything, don't want to acknowledge that they learned from anybody. It's hard. And if you watch the movie Malcolm X, right, which is not historically accurate, there's many problems with that film, but in the movie Malcolm X, there's a historically inaccurate moment in the film where this didn't happen, right? So it was made up for the film. But I think the reason they put it in the film is because it spoke to people, is that when Malcolm X is in the prison and he converts to Islam, he just can't get on his knees and do the Islamic prayer because he's too proud. He's too arrogant, right? And that as somebody who's, fought and been a gangster and been a criminal, he just can't bring himself to do what they call the salat in Islam, where they do the praying, they like kneel, they pray, he just can't do it. Well, that didn't happen, right? And the Nation of Islam are the first to tell you that did not happen, because the Nation of Islam doesn't do that, right? They don't do salat. So, there's no way that actually happened, but that's in the movie. And it's true, right? That a lot of young men, especially, they feel like they're kind of at war with the world. They put up a tough wall. And so, the idea of this religion, Islam is literally called the way of submission, right? That's what it translates to. It's all about submission, right? And that this religion is telling him to get on his knees and pray to God and acknowledge that God is the all-powerful force. And it's hard for him. And I think that they put that in the movie, even though it didn't actually happen, because it speaks to a lot of people's experience. And it also speaks to why religion is very, very fulfilling for many young men when they become religious, when they really truly become religious, not when they start wearing a cross around their neck because it shows all the woke people. No, when they really truly become religious, it's very fulfilling because they can let their guard down, because they cannot have to feel like they're fighting the world, and they can just embrace God, their Father, God, their heavenly parent, who is there for them, and they can put their guard down and feel safe, right? And it's actually very, very fulfilling for many young men when they do find religion. That was my experience, absolutely. When I, reconnected with God in 2015, it was a huge relief for me because I didn't have to feel like I was at war with the universe anymore. I could be at one and at peace with my heavenly parent, and that is a fulfilling thing. And it's about rejecting that second manifestation of Satanism, which is the counterwill, which is the drive to go against, the drive to push back against everything, the drive to assert your independence at all costs. That's the second form of Satanism. Now, the third form of Satanism, which I think is probably the most deadly form of Satanism, and I also think is the most literal form of Satanism, is ideological Satanism. And this is literally the belief of the Church of Satan. So, like, this is actually Satanism, right? If you want to look up Anton LaVey, the guy who opened the Church of Satanism, what did he believe? He believed that human beings are just another animal, right? That's actually a literal quote from the Satanic Bible. Man is just another animal, sometimes better, but often worse than those who walk on all fours. And that selfishness is a virtue. Selfishness is a virtue. Compassion and kindness and altruism are weaknesses, and that you should be blatantly selfish. You should be completely indifferent to other people's suffering, and you should put yourself above all else. You should suppress any empathy within your soul. You should view other humans as just objects that you can manipulate to get what you want. You should be a sociopath, right? That's what the Church of Satan believes. And the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey, says that his greatest inspiration was Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand, right? Born Anita Rosenbaum in the Russian Empire, saw her father humiliated by the Bolsheviks. Her father was a chemist who owned a chemistry plant factory. And after the revolution, when there was huge shortages of housing and there was millions of people were dying during the Russian Civil War, the Bolsheviks came and they pointed guns at them and said, you have to share your mansion with other people that have lost their families. And she watched her father, who she looked up to, a chemist, kind of a self-made man, a small business owner who had a little factory. She saw him humiliated by the Bolshevik army, and she was traumatized by that. And she moved to the United States of America. She, studied film in the Soviet Union, and she got a visa to come to the United States of America. And she came to the United States of America to live with her relatives in Chicago, and they noticed something was off about Anita. That in Chicago in the 1920s, when she moved to Chicago as a young woman, there was a man named William Hickman, and William Hickman had strangled his wife to death, murdered his wife. And the judge told William Hickman, we will not give you the death penalty if you can show remorse. And William Hickman said, I have no remorse. And he was hanged for killing his wife. And Ayn Rand, Anita Rosenbaum, loved William Hickman and had photos of William Hickman all over her. And she was just in awe of this wife strangler. Something was off about Anita Rosenbaum, Ayn Rand. Something was off about her. Then she moved to Hollywood, where she worked in a film studio. And, she was like a typist and a secretary in a screenwriter's office. And, but then she wrote a novel, and she wrote this novel called The Fountainhead. And this novel is about an architect, and this architect designs buildings in a non-conforming way, so no one ever builds his buildings. And he's just so bold and defiant and breaking with the norms and how he makes his buildings that, people don't appreciate him and don't understand him. So he's forced to work in a coal mine. And while he's working so hard in the coal mine, there's this rich girl who's supposed to be Ayn Rand, who has a crush on him, and, rides by the coal mine in her horse and sees him laboring away and is just turned on by him. So one day the hero, Howard Rourke, breaks into her apartment, smashes the windows of her apartment, and comes in and violently rapes her. Right. And it's portrayed in Ayn Rand's narration as this heroic event. And the strong man took what was his and the woman couldn't resist. It's the most twisted, demented, and Ayn Rand eventually, when the House Un-American Activities Committee got going, she started testifying and squealing on her fellow screenwriters who were members of the Communist Party. And she eventually started her own religion, right? Or philosophy, whatever you want to call it, objectivism. And the first pledge of objectivism is that I say that I will only be true to myself. I will never think of anyone else. She wrote a book called The Virtue of Selfishness. The Virtue of Selfishness. Ayn Rand, Anita Rosenbaum, sociopath, politicized and philosophized sociopathy, if there ever was such a thing, right? That is ideological Satanism. Malthusianism, the idea that human beings are a cancer on Mother Earth and that we need to drive down the population and that we should breed people like animals and that the inferior people need to just die off because they'll pass on their genes and we shouldn't have compassion. That's ideological Satanism. Malthusianism, a radical extreme individualism, might makes right, really philosophical irrationalism, the teachings of Friedrich Nietzsche, the idea that morality doesn't exist. It's just something imposed by the weak to restrain the strong, and that the great heroes of history don't live by any rules, don't live by any truth, and just impose their will upon the world, right? Philosophical irrationalism, that is ideological Satanism, right? Friedrich Nietzsche, who celebrated the horrendous crimes of colonialism because he said that, this is just man, European man reasserting his strength. He's going away from these Christian pretenses, this notion of morality, and he's returning to his heroic might makes right self. This is ideological Satanism. This is evil, right? It's evil in political, philosophical, economic, ideological form, right? And this is what literal Satanists believe. And on the right, it is packaged as Ayn Rand and objectivism for conservatives and small business owners, the Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged. And on the left, it's called postmodernism, and it's handed to you by Theodor Adorno. It's handed to you by the Frankfurt School. It's handed to you by ContraPoints and BreadTube. And it is this belief that right and wrong do not exist. With our willpower, we can define reality. Most human beings are evil creatures that would try to hold you back. The great people rule over the inferior ones, and the great society is societies like America, where the great ones can rise to the top and those people down at the bottom have no ability to hold them back. This is what Leo Strauss, the founder of neoconservatism, believed, right? His book Persecution and the Art of Writing is basically arguing that point. Leo Strauss was a Platonic philosopher who was the mentor to all the big neocons. He taught that, that all the great philosophers of history have written in code, have had to write in code, because if the average people knew what they said, they would burn them at the stake, they would persecute them, and that some people are just naturally better than others. They're the philosopher kings, like Plato wrote about in his Republic, and that what makes free societies and good societies is societies that let the philosopher kings come to the top and restrain and hold back the inferior rabble who would get in their way. Contrary to standard Western discourse, Leo Strauss, as well as Irving Kristol and the whole neocon school, views Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union as equal, as the same, and both as examples of upsurges of democracy, excesses of democracy, right? That the Soviet Union incarnated what ordinary people have in their souls. Nazi Germany incarnated what ordinary people have in their souls. It was ordinary people unleashed to rule over the great ones. That's what they believe Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union were. And that America is great because the inferior rabble are brainwashed, the inferior rabble don't understand it, and we let the philosopher kings rule over us. That is the neoconservative doctrine. That is what neocons believe. And they believe that America is great because we're not democratic, in whatever sense that makes. America is great because there is not a mechanism through which the superior ones can be restrained and that America is a world where most of us, inferior rabble, just know our place. That is ideological Satanism. These ideas, philosophical irrationalism, the neoconservative perspective, postmodernism, objectivist Ayn Rand stuff. This is literal Satanism. This is what like actual Satanists believe. This is contrary to any notion of morality. When it really gets down to it, folks, law and morality are the only things that protect the weak from the strong. Now, people hear me say that and they say, well, Caleb, we all know that the law, unfairly treats the weak. That's true. That is absolutely true. We all know that morality is preached by hypocrites, right? That, the people preaching morality, Caleb, if Penny is watching, she's probably saying, well, Caleb, there's all these churches out there that preach morality and support Israel's crimes. And she's right. Law is corrupt. Morality is corrupt. The laws of America are written by the rich people to protect the rich people, and they are corrupt. That is true. And the people that have a platform to extol morality are hypocrites, and they preach a morality and a worldview that reinforces the status quo. You're not wrong in any of that. But the issue isn't that law should be abolished. It's that law should be made to be just law. And the issue isn't that we shouldn't have morality. The issue is that we should have true morality. And that if you completely abolish law and you completely abolish morality, what you get is the strong ruthlessly ruling over the weak with no restraint, right? When there's an old woman crossing the street, right, and there's a young, strong man there who wants to take her purse, there are two things that stop him from doing so. One is morality. He thinks that's a nice old lady. I don't have a right to beat her up and take her purse. That would make me a bad person. That might be what I want to do, but that would make me not nice. I have empathy and compassion for the old lady. I'm not going to beat her up and take her purse. But if he has no morality, there's a second thing that stops him from beating her up and taking her purse, and that is, if they catch me, I might go to jail for doing so. Law and morality stops the big, strong young man from punching the old lady and taking her purse. If you get rid of morality, if that big, strong man, it never occurs to him, that's not a nice thing to do. Don't take the old lady's purse. It never occurs to him. He's just been told his whole life, hey, might makes right. The strong rule over the weak, right? Compassion is weak. Well, he's going to take her purse. And if there's no law, right, there's no consequence for him doing so. If there's no one who's going to say that's stealing, young man, and throw him in jail for punching the old lady and taking her purse, what's going to stop him from doing so? If you abolish law and you abolish morality, what you get is the law of the jungle. What you get is the strong ruthlessly ruling over the weak with no restraint. That's what you get. The whole reason that we have law, the whole reason that we have morality is so we can at least pretend or at least try on some level to not have the strong ruthlessly rule over the weak. There's a quote on the wall of the U.S. Department of Justice. I'm not a big fan generally of how the U.S. Department of Justice operates, but there's a quote that they have in Washington, D.C. I walked by it when I was working in D.C., and I said, I like that quote. And it says, where law stops, tyranny begins. And that is the truth. Without law, you have tyranny. You have absolute tyranny. Law is an attempt to restrict tyranny. It's not perfect, and it's often corrupted, and it often, it can be misused and exercised in a tyrannical way, but it's at least some basic human attempt to not have the tyranny of the strong over the weak, and the same for morality. And ideological Satanism opposes both law and morality, right? Ideological Satanism says right and wrong don't exist, and might makes right, and just be selfish and don't have compassion. Ideological Satanism says we don't need no stinking government to pass child labor laws or pass a minimum wage, and we don't need and that that if you abolish law and you abolish morality, you get might makes right. You get the strong ruling over the weak, and that is Satanism, and that's what they openly want. So that's the third form of Satanism, is that ideological Satanism, which is liberalism. It's liberalism taken to its extreme degree. Liberalism is good. right? Liberalism is the belief in individual rights. It's what the revolutions that defined the Western world were about. The American Revolution, the French Revolution, the English Civil War, John Locke, right? Liberalism was necessary. We needed to have free speech in this world. We needed to have freedom of religion in this world. We needed to have freedom of assembly. We needed to have freedom of conscience. But if one takes individual rights and blows it up to an extreme where you're negating any sense of collectivism, where you're saying that human beings are not collective creatures, as Margaret Thatcher said, there is no such thing as society. There are only individuals. That's a literal quote from Margaret Thatcher. There's no such thing as society. That's Winston Churchill. There's no such thing as society. There's only individuals. If that's what you believe, you're going to end up with this. And that's what it is. If there's no such thing as society, only individuals, society has no right to tell you what's right and wrong or to have a moral code. And society certainly doesn't have the right to, protect people and enforce laws. And that's what you get, right? And this is ideological Satanism, the mentality of radical individualism that seeks to abolish law and morality, that seeks to abolish any collective obligation, that celebrates the individual above all else and views humanity with contempt. That is the third form. That is ideological Satanism. It calls itself postmodernism, calls itself libertarianism, calls itself objectivism, calls itself philosophical irrationalism. It calls itself many, many different things. Neoconservatism, objectivism, whatever you want to call it, that's Satan. But there is a fourth form. There's a fourth form of Satanism. And that fourth form of Satanism is, it's not an idea. It's a feeling. It's something that is very hard to define. But it's something we all know. It's the part of you that is working against you. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Because there are many of us that when we go to try something new and exciting, a voice in our head says, don't. You're going to fail. Everyone's going to laugh at you. There's some people, when they wake up in the morning, there's a voice in their head that says, why are you getting up and going into this world? Everyone's going to treat you badly. No one likes you. Why do you even show your face? There's a part of you that is demoralized. There's a part of you that doesn't want you to look to the future with hope. There's a part of you that is working against yourself. And I think it exists for all of us to some degree. And perhaps it's in its healthiest form. It's kind of like that first thing. It's just a natural questioner. We all should question ourselves, right? We shouldn't be overconfident. Overconfidence can kill you. But if you have been abused, if you had an abusive parent, if you were bullied, if you had an older sibling who put you down or a younger sibling who put you down, this can get amplified. It can get amplified. This part of your mind that is rooting against you. This part of your mind that is rooting against you, that is demoralized, that is hopeless, that is trying to prevent you from moving forward with life, prevent you from making new connections, prevent you from going out and achieving things, prevent you from finding fulfillment, prevent you from risking and trying. That part of your mind that is working against you, right? If you have trauma in your past, if you have people who have mistreated you, it can be amplified. And in fact, it can take on those people's very words, right? It can take on the words of the abusive parent. It can take on the words of the bully. It can take on the words of the person who has harmed you. Right? And that all of us to some degree, for some people it's harder than others, but all of us to some degree, in order to achieve what we have achieved, we have to push back against that voice. We have to fight back against it. We have to say no to that part of our brain that wants to demoralize us. No to that part of our brain that tells us there's no hope. No to that part of the brain that says that there's no reason to get up in the morning, that there's nothing to go for, that everyone's judging you. We have to fight against that part of the brain. And it's not easy. And it requires strength and energy and passion to do it. But it must be done. It must be done. But I'm here to tell you, you're not meant to fight that part of your mind in isolation. You need other people. You need other people. Other people. And the connection that you find in other people and the encouragement that you can get from having a true friend or a true comrade. That is one of the greatest antidotes to that internal Satanism, this fourth form of Satanism that exists. So I hope that my opening remarks tonight were insightful. We're all on a journey of trying to find our way to awaken and stop living biologically and really take on a human existence and change the world. That's what we're trying to do. And as we do that, we challenge each other. We push back against each other. We push for each other to awaken more closely. That's what we do. We're on a mission. We're on a journey. This is a collective operation. Over 1,000 live streams. This is live stream number 1,004 and 1,005. Can you believe it? We're on a journey together. We're on a journey together. And we're walking on the great road. We are walking on the great road. And sometimes it's very comfortable, and sometimes it's rocky and difficult, and we're walking on the great road. Join the Center for Political Innovation. Learn to transcend living biologically and awaken. Great things are happening in this world. I believe that the world is not going to hell. The world is going toward God. And great things are happening, and the human spirit will not be defeated. And globalism and imperialism and the rule of the Western bankers is going to be ended. And humanity is going to awaken like you never believe. But all of us have agency, and all of us have a role to play in this. And my goal is to help you find the power within yourself to build something new and beautiful, and truly awaken and truly take on a human existence. And on that note, we'll do the roll call. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Penny is with us tonight. Good to see you. Which god, Caleb? Zeus, or Ares, or Jupiter, or Poseidon, I think. Maybe it's Odin. Odin in Valhalla. I'm just kidding. All right. Harry in Michigan. Yeah. Diana in Orlando, Florida. St. David's, Bermuda. Ryan in Kansas City. Jenny in Cincinnati. Hi, Angel. JT24 in Mississippi. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Names and locations. Matt Smiley in Phoenix. Good to see you, Matt. Hope you're enjoying the show. Names and locations. Names and locations. I didn't know Facebook sent that. Names and locations. Anybody else watching tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who's with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? It's one of those people's, like, things are not coming into the StreamYard, right? But I see them on the what do you call it? On the YouTube. I see Grandpa of 10 in Tennessee. I see Al Sydney in Australia, Baruz Al Messian, Irene from New York City, Bendigo, Australia, David Fox. I see Rose. Good to see you, Rose. I see, yeah, we got a good crew of people on here tonight. Good crew of people. I don't know why this StreamYard is I'm not seeing them in StreamYard, but that's okay. I'm seeing them elsewhere, so that's good. Well, listen, folks, I would like to answer people's questions for the remainder of the night. We just have a little bit of a problem, which is no one's actually sent a question. So please send a question so I have something to talk about for the remainder of the show. Buy me a coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com and /Caleb Maupin. Here it is. And send me a question. Send me something to talk about in the second half of the program, right? You got to send go to buy me a coffee and send me a question so I have something to answer, right? You got to do it or else I don't have anything to say. So somebody, people, please, there are things I can talk about. I'm sure you all have things you want me to talk about: political, philosophical, artistic, cultural, right? You can ask me about vampire movies. You can ask me about other movies. You can ask me about Valentine's Day, which is tomorrow. You can ask me about bowling. I've been bowling a few times in my life. I don't know. You can ask me about what type of socks I'm wearing. I can show you my socks, but please go to buy me a coffee. Well, Grandpa of 10 says he's going to do that. He says he didn't know how to do it. Well, please do it. And ask me a question. Give me something to talk about. Give me something to talk about here in the second half of the show. I felt like I had a great time giving those opening remarks. It's been a while since I've gone over those concepts, and I feel like the kind of self-help but unorthodox and highly political self-help angle has been a great part of this channel as we've grown over the years. So that's good. So maybe I should put some music on. Should I put some music on? Should I put a video on? What should I do? Yeah. Okay. We'll put a sea shanty. This is a sea shanty. I love sea shanties. This is Blow the Man Down. So go to buymeacoffee.com, send Caleb Maupin a question. I'll answer it after we play some music here. So send some questions. Give me something to talk about. I got a lot of energy in me, folks. It's Friday night. We're streaming. We've gone for an hour and 10 minutes. I've got plenty more in me. So here we go. Blow the man down.
Oh, blow the man down, bullies, blow the man down. To me way, hey, blow the man down. Blow the man down, bullies, blow him away. Give me some time to blow the man down. We went over the bar on the 13th of May. To me way, hey, blow the man down. The galloper jumped and the gal came away. Give me some time to blow the man down. As I was a-walking down Paradise Street, to me way, hey, blow the man down. A saucy young damsel I happened to meet. Give me some time to blow the man down. I says to her, Polly, and how do you do? To me way, hey, blow the man down. Says she, none the better for seeing of you. Give me some time to blow the man down. Oh, sailors is tinkers and tailors is red. To me way, hey, blow the man down. And we're all of us coming to see you again. Oh, give me some time to blow the man down. So we'll blow the man up and we'll blow the man down. To me way, hey, blow the man down. And we'll blow him away into Liverpool town. Give me some time to blow the man down. Give me some time to blow the man down. Give me time. Give me time. Give me time. Give me time. Give me time to blow the man down.
Yes, there you go. Maybe what I should do is I should threaten to play that again unless you send a super chat. But please send a question. Look, I've been talking about the Great Road and how we walk on the Great Road. There's actually a Chinese communist anthem called The Great Road. So I'm going to put The Great Road, the classic Chinese communist anthem, on. Here's We Walk Upon a Great Road, a Chinese communist song. All right. Well, that was some good music, and 2 people sent questions. So just a reminder, if you've got a question, you can send a Rumble rant on the Rumble. You can cash at me at CalebMoppin22. But the best way to send your question is go to buymeacoffee.com/CalebMoppin. 2 people have already done it. And Penny and Matt have both sent their question in. Matthew, I guess. So I guess we'll go with the new guy first. Matthew says, new to your live stream, love it. Where do I start in order to learn more? Well, my organization is called the Center for Political Innovation. I live stream here on YouTube. I live stream, it goes on Facebook and also goes on Rumble. You can go to my website, calebmoppinbooks.net. You can learn all about me. My organization is the Center for Political Innovation, cpiusa.org. I've written a lot of books. Our organization is very, very dedicated to, fighting for working families, et cetera. This is the event we just had in New Jersey. We had a great event in New Jersey to kick off the year. We're a great, great organization of people dedicated to anti-imperialism. This is our New Jersey event. This is kind of the quick video summary of our New Jersey event we just had.
The ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with our ballot in our hands? God gave the land to the people. First step, sound the blast for freedom, boys, and send it far and wide. March along to victory, for God is on our side. While the voice of nature thunders o'er the rising tide, God gave the land for the people. The land was God who made the land. The land, the ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hand? God gave the land to the people. Hark, the shout is swelling from the east and from the west. Why should we beg further? Let the landlords take the best. Make them pay their taxes, or the land respect the rest. The land was meant for the people. The land was God who gave the land. The land, the ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hand? God gave the land to the people. The banner has been raised on high to face the battle din. The army now is marching on the struggle to begin. We'll never cease our efforts till the victory we win. And the land is free for the people. The land was God who gave the land. The land, the ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hand? God gave the land for the people. Clear the way to liberty, the land must all be free. Winds will not falter and the storm fighting person speaks. Still the flag we love so well shall wave from sea to sea. For the land that is free for the people. The land was God who gave the land. The land, the ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hand? God gave the land to the people. Yeah!
All righty. That was fun. That was great. We're the Center for Political Innovation. We do a lot of great stuff. We are planning our convention in Chicago this summer, August 15th. We have members across the country, pretty active group in Chicago, pretty active group in Minneapolis, pretty active group in Los Angeles. We got people in the Northeast, and, we have done quite a bit, and we are anti-imperialists fighting for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. That is what we are all about. And, politics in our time has gotten to be so confusing, and nothing seems to make sense, but we are for right and we are against wrong. And we are for justice and for working families first, and for a world beyond the rule of big banks and monopolies. And that's what we're striving for. We have a history with communism, but we've moved on to a new stage, right? And we are building something called innovationism. And you can go to our website, CPI USA. You can learn all about what innovation is and what our vision for a world in which human creativity is celebrated and invested in is all about. You can read all about us. We're doing great stuff. And I absolutely love our community and what we are doing. So yeah, we've got, so if anyone else has any more questions, I do need people to send questions, right? It's vitally important that people send questions for the second half of the program. Like Matt just did, like Penny just did, that would be great. Oh, I see we got another one that's come in. Very good. So we'll do that. But yeah, we will also, while we're waiting for any more questions that might come in, buy me a coffee is the best way to send them. While we're waiting for any more questions that might come in, I will put on. So this is Dean Reed. Dean Reed was an American country singer who was kind of a flop in America, but he sold lots of albums in Argentina. So he moved to Argentina and to Chile. And then when Salvador Allende, the socialist leader, became the president of Chile, he was part of the Salvador Allende movement. And then when the coup happened and Pinochet came to power, he moved to the Soviet Union. And Dean Reed, they called him the Red Elvis because they say he's the guy who brought rock and roll to the Eastern Bloc. He died. He lived in East Germany at the time of his death. And he was an American cowboy country singer who became a communist. And so this is him performing Kansas City.
I'm going to Kansas City, Kansas City, here I come. Here I come, here I come, here I come. I'm going to Kansas City, Kansas City, here I come. Here I come, here I come, here I come. They got some crazy little women there, and I'm gonna get me one. I'm gonna be staying on the corner, 12th Street and Vine. I'm gonna be staying on the corner, 12th Street and Vine. With my Kansas City baby and a bottle of Kansas City wine. Well, I might take a train, I might take a plane, but if I'm to walk, I'm going just the same. I'm going to Kansas City, Kansas City, here I come. Here I come, here I come, here I come. They got some crazy little women there, and I'm gonna get me one. Take it away, yeah. I'm going to Kansas City, Kansas City, here I come. Here I come, here I come, here I come. They got some crazy little women there, and I'm gonna get me one. Yeah, they got some crazy little women there, and I'm gonna get me one. Yeah, they got some crazy little women there, and I'm gonna get me one.
Now that's an American blues song, Kansas City, by Dean Reed. But actually, Dean Reed did political songs, and so I am going to put on. He did a song from Latin America called Venceremos, which is a Spanish socialist song called Venceremos, which is it was the anthem of Salvador Allende. The socialist leader. And this is him actually performing it in Czechoslovakia on state television in Czechoslovakia. He performed the anthem Venceremos, the Salvador Allende anthem. So here we go.
Here's a song, l'unidad popular en Chile. Está prohibido ahora, pero nosotros lo cantamos en cada lugar en el mundo donde hay un hombre, un ser humano que cree en la libertad. Desde el hondo crisol de la patria se levanta el clamor popular, ya se enuncia la nueva alborada, todo Chile comienza a cantar, recordando el soldado valiente, cuyo ejemplo se hiciera inmortal. Enfrentemos primero la muerte, traicionar a la patria amar. Venceremos, venceremos, mil cadenas habrá que romper. Venceremos, venceremos, al fascismo sabremos vencer. Venceremos, venceremos, mil cadenas habrá que romper. Venceremos, venceremos, al fascismo sabremos vencer. Campesinos, soldados y obreros, la mujer de la patria también, estudiantes, empleados y obreros, cumpliremos con nuestro deber, traeremos la tierra de gloria, socialista será el porvenir, todos juntos haremos la historia, a cumplir, a cumplir, a cumplir. Venceremos, venceremos, mil cadenas habrá que romper. Venceremos, venceremos, al fascismo sabremos vencer. Venceremos, venceremos, mil cadenas habrá que romper. Venceremos, venceremos, al fascismo sabremos vencer.
All right. Well, and hey, we're having a good night because more questions have come in. And so we'll do them a bit by bit, but we'll play some music as they come in. Penny asked, I'll get to Penny's question now. She said, as you listen to Wallace Waddles, how do you square the evolution messages with the passages in Genesis that claim God spoke creation into being in 6 days? Doesn't evolution theory negate the whole Bible? Well, Penny, I have always been, I have always been, even when I was a child, my family, we were never biblical literalists, right? We always understood that the Bible was not the literal word of God. It was a recollection of wisdom of the Jewish scriptures in the Old Testament, and it was the recollection of the life of Jesus, in the New Testament, and the letters of the Apostle Paul. And, it was not the literal transcribed word of God. That was always the Protestant upbringing I brought. The idea that the Bible is the literal word of God, that God literally wrote it, and it is literally 100% true. Our comrade Gavin, I'm sure he 100% believes that. But I was never brought up to believe the Bible was literally the word of God. And that is not, I believe that's not what the Catholic Church teaches. And that's certainly not the Protestantism that I grew up. I grew up as a mainline Protestant of the United Church of Christ. What was interesting is that, my father's a biologist, and that was a really big part of my identity growing up. Was our family believed in Darwinian evolution, even though we attended church. Almost everyone at my school was a creationist. And to the point that even though it's illegal in the United States to teach creationism in school, we were taught that you have two options: scientific evolution, biblical creation. That's not legal. And that, my father being a biologist, we were always, it was just kind of assumed that and people would, that it was always just assumed that, the Bible and evolution kind of walked hand in hand. Now, recently, as an adult, I have become, I'm not a biblical literalist. I'm still not, but I will say I'm much more critical of Darwinian evolution than I used to be, because I know that Charles Darwin was a Malthusian. and that his theory is loaded with things, that modern biologists say, they're not negating his understanding of how life changed, but there's certain concepts in his work that don't match, scientific reality. For example, Charles Darwin very much believed that man was like the pinnacle of evolution. Wallace Wattles believes that too. And I probably believe that to some degree or other myself, but that's not in the science. There's nothing in the science that says man is the ultimate species, right? Charles Darwin views man as an animal, but he views man as like the ultimate animal, like the highest animal. I don't think man is an animal. I think human beings have a soul. And I also, I don't, think that biology alone, that obviously, human beings didn't come from nowhere. And yeah, so, there's that. The other thing is that, Charles Darwin, he was writing in the context of the British Empire. He was a wealthy British aristocrat, and, his writing on the descent of man, there is a very much British Empire ideology. Now, he never used the phrase survival of the fittest. That was like an interpretation of his ideas. And then they were adopted by not so good people, and that actually, according to Darwinism, the fittest are those who produce the most fertile offspring. So the fittest is not the richest, because they actually reproduce less than poor people do. The fittest is not the wealthiest or but survival of the fittest immediately became a rallying cry for British capitalism, right? And they genocided the Irish people on the basis of we're the superior species, we're the superior stock, and these inferior ones. They genocided the people in India on the basis of we're the superior species, right? And that the crimes of British imperialism were largely justified in the name of Darwinism. And and I mean that is the reality, and that social Darwinism and Malthusianism almost walked hand in hand, and that Darwin himself had a huge amount of bias in the fact that he was a Malthusian, he was a British Empire guy, and that came across in his theories. Now, modern biologists look at his theories and say there are certain things that are true, but yeah, that was never an issue for me. It's only as an adult, having spent a long time traveling around the world, that I've gotten to the point that I'm not, how do I put this? I don't believe in biblical literalism. I don't think the earth is literally 6 days creation. I don't believe the Bible is literally true. But at the same time, I used to be very adamant that Darwinism was correct. And I'm at the point that I question it a lot more than I ever used to. And that also a lot of what Wallace Wattles says, and that's the interesting thing, is he accepts like a Darwinian narrative of like, and many people have pointed out, the Bible and Darwin, they have a very different time period, but they do kind of have the same narrative, right? It's like first there's the ocean, stuff in the ocean, and then there's animals on the land, and then out of that come people, right? I mean, that's, if you look at Darwin, I mean, let there be light, the Big Bang, right? Let there be light. And then out of the universe of the Big Bang comes the earth, right? And out of the earth, right, you have creatures in the ocean. Out of the creatures of the ocean comes animals on the land, and then out of the land animals comes humans, right? So, it seems like Darwin's chain of events lines up pretty well with the biblical creation story. It's also been pointed out to me, and this is interesting, that many people read Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 as being two separate creation stories, right? That Genesis 1 is the 6-day creation, that ends with man being given dominion over the earth and told to be fruitful and multiply, right? That the earth is basically man's property, right? And that's how it ends. The second, Genesis 2, suddenly God creates man, and then he creates the world around man, right? So it's like, it's almost two different stories, right? And so then, man, he creates man, and man is lonely, creates woman, and then he creates the garden for man to be in. So it's almost like two different stories from the Hebrew tradition. The Hebrews had the creation story, and then they had the Adam and Eve Garden of Eden story, and they're two different accounts, right? And that's interesting as well. And some people point to the fact that the fall of man story actually lines up very, very well with Marxism, in that Adam and Eve, the main thing about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden is that they have everything. They don't have to work. Everything's there for them. They hunt and gather, right? There's plenty for them, right? And they just take what they need. But then at some point, they gain knowledge. They become intelligent, right? They eat the fruit or whatever. And as a result of eating the fruit, suddenly they can't hunt and gather anymore. They have to work. And what does Adam have to do? He has to grow food. He has to push a plow. By the sweat of your brow, you shall work to produce the food. So it seems like to some degree or other, there was knowledge among whoever wrote that at one point human beings could just hunt and gather. And then at some point we got too good at hunting and gathering. We got too smart. And with our smart, we then had to work hard and grow our own food. That comes across in the story as well. So, but as I said before, Wallace Wattles, he's very religious. He's quoting the Bible up and down throughout that, and he has his own interpretation. You should read his book, his two books on Jesus. He has two books on Jesus, The New Christ and Jesus, the Man and His Works. And both of those are his interpretation of the New Testament. And they're very socialist, I must add, right? The self-help books that he wrote, he talks about socialism a little bit, right? But he almost kind of urges people to, don't jump the gun. Socialism will come when the people are ready for it, but you can't build socialism based on jealousy and resentment. You have to build socialism based on optimism. That's what he says in the self-help books. But if you read Jesus, the Man and His Works, and if you read The New Christ, in both of those books, he's making the point that Jesus and his teachings mandate socialism. And he's saying that that you cannot be indifferent to other men, and that he's very Christian, but he's also very socialist. He comes across as more Christian and more socialist in those two books. In the self-help texts, he's very much urging you to take on an attitude, a proper attitude. And in one of those books, he uses Eugene Debs, the socialist leader, as a great example. And in all three of the self-help books that I like, he makes a point of saying that you cannot build socialism by talking about how bad the world is or resenting other people. And you cannot build a socialist movement that's about wanting to take from those who have, right? You have to build a socialist movement that's about the abundance that can exist for all if we rationally organize the means of production. And he makes that point in both of those books. But yeah, Wallace Wattles it has done wonders for me. I have listened. I keep it as my background noise in the house, and I just have it on loop. It's how I get through the day. It's great. It is really, really, really great stuff. So we had a couple more questions that have come in. And I guess I'll do this one now. This is from Svetlana, right? I don't speak Russian well enough. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your name. Svetlana says, are you planning to go to Russia again soon? And do you think the USA can truly vote themselves out of the clutches of the deep state? Well, to the first question, it looks like I'll be there soon. I don't give away travel plans generally on these streams because I like to be discreet and, I don't want to, announce, but it looks like I'll be there again soon in the coming months. That's what I'll say for now. I love Russia. Every time I go there, it's amazing. I absolutely love going to Russia, and Russia's an amazing fortress of anti-imperialism. What Russian President Putin has done, building that country up in the face of so much opposition, and it's amazing to see how they've tried to ruin Russia's economy, and Russia's economy is amazingly strong right now, and they have state central planning, right? Oil and gas are in the hands of the state, and then they use the oil and gas revenue to develop and build up the economy. Last time I was there, I got to go to Nizhny Novgorod. The last time I was there, I was in Moscow, but the time before that, I got to go to the city of Nizhny Novgorod. That was really neat. I'd never been to Nizhny Novgorod before. And it looks like the next time I'm there, I'm going to be in yet another city. So yeah, I'm quite excited to get back to Russia. And as far as voting out the deep state, look, elections are part of the struggle, and they always have been. right? But it's going to take much more than just voting. We need a movement. There's nothing short of a movement is going to say, and it's hard because people don't know what a movement is, right? People just don't know. They think a movement is listening to a podcast. They think a movement is donating to someone's Patreon. No, a movement is people coming together and caring for each other while struggling and fighting. We have to build a movement. We have to build a real movement, an organized movement to demand that things get better. And elections will be part of that movement, I'm sure, right? And, I just want to throw this out there because, again, now that this channel is getting a little more buzz, right? We've been an uptick since I've been talking about Chomsky and stuff like that, and since I've been going on Academic Agent, right? Why did I'm not saying how I voted, but why did I say Trump was the better candidate in the last election? And why did I make clear that I wanted Donald Trump to win the 2024 election? Because Trump was pushing a message of, I will end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. I will make peace around the world, and I will protect your free speech. That was his message as president. Kamala Harris's campaign, on the other hand, was saying they were going to keep fighting until the last Ukrainian. They banned any Palestinians any Arabs from even speaking at their convention. They said they were going to keep fighting in Ukraine until Ukraine won, whatever the hell that means, which is, that's ridiculous, right? Ukraine winning, like they're going to retake Crimea. Give me a break. Ukraine's already lost, right? But she was going to keep fighting until Ukraine won. And then Tim Walz said on national television that one of the focuses of the new administration would be cracking down on disinformation. What does that mean? That means outlawing people who say the things that I say, right? And during the election, the trial in federal court of the Uhuru defendants, these black socialists who were charged with being agents of Russia, they were on trial, and Scott Ritter was next in line. They had already charged and raided the Uhuru. And then during the election in September, they raided the home of Scott Ritter. All right. And so he was going to be the next one that they prosecuted under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. So if Kamala Harris had won the election, it would have been the American people in their millions voting to keep war with Russia and the Ukraine war going as long as possible, voting in favor of a crackdown on free speech, in favor of just continuing the policies with regard to Israel or whatever. And Trump positioned himself as if he would protect free speech, as if he would end the wars. And as he said, he even sounded like he was better about Israel-Palestine than Kamala was. Now, Trump didn't do any of those things, but that's because the problem is not one man. The problem is the system, right? And that I didn't think that Trump would get in there and necessarily, come in on a white horse and save the day. But if Kamala Harris had been given an electoral mandate, we'd be a lot better off. Right now, we're in a situation where Trump has been an awful president. He's been an awful president so far. I mean, there's little moments of hope, like Tulsi Gabbard exposing Russiagate, like the meeting in August. Every so often, there's something good that Trump does. But for the most part, Trump has been an awful president. But he didn't promise to be an awful president. Kamala Harris promised to be an awful president. And if there had been Americans voting for those awful policies, they would have come in there with a vengeance, right? I'd probably be in prison right now. And so would a lot of people I like, so would a lot of people that, a lot of names, I'm not going to name names, but a lot of names that you all, if you're part of our anti-imperialist, Russia friendly community, you can think of, we'd all be in jail right now, basically, because the public would have voted. Yes, we want to crack down on disinformation. Yes, we want to fight to the last Ukrainian. So it's better that Trump won, even though Trump didn't deliver on what he promised, because the American people at least wanted what he promised, right? The election is a measurement of popular sentiments, right? That's what Lenin actually wrote. He said that elections are a measurement of public sentiments, right? And I stand by that position. I have absolutely no regrets for the fact that we boosted the peace message of Trump's campaign. Absolutely no regrets that when Trump was running for president for the second time, and he said, that he was going to make peace, we hit the streets. I will actually show the video, right? We hit the streets. This is Noah and Briggy and Phil. We hit the streets of Manhattan with a big banner that said, "Only peace can make America great again." We launched the Peace MAGA operation. This was how we intervened in the 2024 election. This wasn't necessarily supporting Trump. This was saying that if Trump wants to make America great again, He needs to make peace around the world. And we did this many places. This is when we kicked off the Peace MAGA campaign. So we just loaded up the banner and the PVC pipes, and we're headed up to Central Park. Let's see how this goes.
Away, 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 away.
We have the banner out, and now we're getting the zip ties on. How's it going, guys?
All right.
All right.
1, 2, 3.
Beautiful. Nope, it's not gonna hold. So now we want to cut some poles and cut the other pole in half. All right, so we're here at Trump Tower. Noah and I made it. We seem to have lost track of Phil along the way. He stopped to buy some water. Hopefully he's with us soon, but mission is accomplished. We got the banner to Trump Tower. Only peace can make America great again.
This is the man that we want Donald Trump to be. Here on this banner, you will see the greatest thing that Donald Trump did in his entire presidency. He went and became the first president to ever visit the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea. This is a country that's been technically at war with the United States since the 1950s.
Donald Trump shaking hands with oligarchs told you we're our enemies. They told you these people are horrible. They told you these people are terrible, that they will never do anything good for us. There's a reason for that. It's called money. It's called power. They want to weaken you mentally. They want to capture your spirit, stomp you out, and tell you, why bother? Why get out of bed in the morning? Why do anything worthwhile? No. Understand, peace is possible, but you must give it a chance. Giving peace a chance is giving yourself a chance.
We are here to say that only peace can make America great again. And that what Donald Trump did on North Korea, that was awesome. And we want that to continue. We want more peace negotiations. We want more trade. We want more diplomacy.
The real America is not with the bankers, it's not the criminals on Wall Street.
We don't control our government anymore. And our republic is being run by powerful forces that are very much unelected or subverting our democracy.
Rebuild America. Rebuild our country instead of bombing countries around the world. We need Donald Trump to stand up to the military-industrial complex. We need Donald Trump to stand up to the war lobby.
We want to put America first and not the criminals who are lining their pockets on Wall Street with American taxpayer money to go bomb children overseas. Believe the oligarchs at your own peril. Believe them and sleep under a bridge. Believe them and not have a job. Believe them and understand you'll never have health care. Believe them and see what you get. Let's believe in one another. Let's believe that peace is possible.
It's going good. I mean, people have been reacting well. Small crowds will form when we have the bullhorn out, and then we'll take a break for a little bit and they'll disperse. Earlier, the Secret Service came by. I thought that was interesting. I think we're making an impact.
Russia's not our enemy. China's not our enemy. North Korea is not our enemy. Our enemy is the war lobby. Our enemy is the military-industrial complex. And if we really love America, we should demand that they take all the money they spend on bombs and tanks and weapons and rebuild this country.
Only peace will make America great again. We need to go back to this moment when Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America, went to a country that we have technically been at war with since 1952 and said, let's give peace a chance. We want Trump to be a peace candidate. Every poll says that the American people want peace.
We're out here doing amazing work today, speaking out loud and proud about what we should be doing about making the world a better place. I'm really excited about it. Everyone has been amazing. Our message is getting through to people. I heard people actually talking as I walked by, saying give peace a chance.
We need jobs and schools and healthcare and education in this country, not wars around the world, not death, destruction, and militarism. Only peace can make America great again. Why is it that people in North Carolina are left stranded while the National Guard is in the Middle East? America's working families have been left behind while our leaders focus on wars in other countries. America first means working families first. It means no more wars. It means offering a hand of friendship and cooperation to countries around the world.
We are out here in front of Trump Tower today to say we deserve that and we do not want World War III.
That's right. They want to weaken you mentally. They want to capture your spirit, stomp you out, and tell you, why bother? Why get out of bed in the morning? Why do anything worthwhile? No!
Americans don't want their tax dollars to be dumped into a hole, funding wars around the world so that bankers on Wall Street can play a game of dominating the economies of the world, while Americans are starving in ditches all across this country, while there are homeless people sitting 3 blocks from the White House. In the richest country on the face of the earth, so-called, you have homeless people on every block, on every street, on every city. Why is that?
Only peace can make America great again. Only peace can make America great again. Only peace can make America great again.
If Donald Trump wants to get back in the White House, he's saying that he needs to do what the American people want him to do, and that is to make peace around the world.
Let's stand up for each other. Let's believe in one another. Let's believe that peace is possible.
Only peace can make America great again, and this is the man that we want Donald Trump to be. This brought tears to my eyes. I was so moved when it happened to see the President of the United States and the President of North Korea shaking hands. This is what the new world could be. This is who we want Donald Trump to be. We want him to be a peace president. We want him to be a peace candidate in this election.
I'm hungry. I'm really, really hungry. I mean, it was hard work walking it over here. It was like, what, like a 2-mile walk?
Yeah.
Felt like it. And it's the wind. It's like a big sail.
Challenging but rewarding.
Yeah.
You know, we actually had fun.
We're the Center for Political Innovation, and we are out here saying only peace can make America great again.
Yeah. Yeah. And we took that banner out at the New York Public Library. And on the day that Trump was at Madison Square Garden, we had that banner and we took it to DC for Trump's inauguration. All those videos are online. That was our intervention in the election. We were trying to push an anti-imperialist message. Absolutely no regrets. Absolutely no regrets. And the people were like, "Oh, Caleb, you said you voted for Trump." I said, Trump winning was the best outcome, right? No other candidate really had a chance. And that the Muslim community punished the Democrats for their support for Israel. The population rejected censorship. The population said they wanted to end the war in Ukraine. And Trump got in, and the problem is the structure. It's not one person. And, you know, that's not our fault. But if there had been an electoral mandate for all the bad things Kamala wanted to do, that wouldn't have been good. So we've been very clear about that. We have nothing to apologize for, right? And I think our intervention in the election was very effective. I'm very proud of how we were able to intervene in the event. So there's that. So yeah, now we've got a couple more questions that have come in, but I do want to play some more uplifting music. And I also, would like to give people an opportunity to send more questions. So I'm going to remind you that if you have a question, go to Buy Me a Coffee /Caleb Maupin, buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. Send your question. Also do Rumble Rants, Cash App. And we're going to put on another Dean Reed song. This is called Somos Los Revolucionarios. And we'll put that on. And then after that, we will answer some more questions. So send some more questions. Here we go.
Ihnen haben dieses Lied zum Sieg der Unidad Popular zusammen mit ihm gesungen. Also jetzt mit diesem Lied Dean Reed.
La montaña luchando está, la pradera de la muchachos sonreirán, en las filas anden marchan, y la gente saludará cuando nos vean pasar. Somos los revolucionarios, queremos la justicia y la libertad. Somos los revolucionarios, defenderemos siempre la paz y humanidad. San Martín ya nos mostró cuál rumbo hay que seguir. También tú debes luchar, tu destino construir. Luego el mundo comprenderá que es la lucha de un ideal y que a todos quieren igualar para implantar la paz. ¡Hey! Somos revolucionarios, queremos la justicia y la libertad. Somos revolucionarios, defenderemos siempre la paz y humanidad.
Yep, that's Dean Reed, the Red Elvis, the guy who brought rock and roll to the Eastern Bloc, kind of a legendary figure. Yeah, it's, at one point, Tom Hanks was going to make a movie about his life, but I don't think it ever happened. But oh well. All right. So Gabby sent a question via Cash App. She said, I really don't understand this system. Why isn't school affordable? If we need more American doctors and professionals, wouldn't it make sense to make education accessible? Why does it feel like people at the top don't see that poor families matter too? Well, brain drain is something that started during the Cold War, and it has royally screwed over Americans, and it has royally screwed over developing countries, and it works great for the imperialists. So basically, during the Cold War, you've all heard of something called the Berlin Wall, right? What was the Berlin Wall for? Well, Caleb, that's because the evil communists were just so evil and everyone wanted to get away, so they built a giant wall to lock people in. False. Actually, most people in East Germany didn't want to leave. Most people's living standard went up. But there were a certain level of people that were engineers, doctors, kind of skilled, highly trained professionals who the USA went out of its way to court and, bribe basically to come to the West. And basically the Berlin Wall was a picket line. It was, a picket line means you don't cross the picket line. And that, you couldn't scab on the revolution. Most people benefited from East Germany. However, there was a minority of people who saw their incomes go down or whatever, and they weren't allowed to leave. And during the Cold War, the USA realized that brain drain was great because it started with the communist countries. But, these communist governments spend lots of money teaching people to be doctors, teaching people to be engineers, teaching them to be scientists. And they would spend a lot of their own money to educate these people. And then these people would pack up and move here and make lots of money. And then the communist countries wouldn't have the engineers and the scientists that they needed. And it was free for America because we didn't have to train our own people to do it. And it was free. It hurt the communist countries because they would lose their professionals. But it's not just communist countries, right? If you go to the doctor in America, especially in an urban area, you're likely going to have a doctor from India. You're going to have a doctor from Eastern Europe. You're going to have a doctor from Africa, from the African continent. Why? Because these governments will spend lots of money to train their own people to be engineers and doctors and scientists and all of that. And then they come to America and they are here and they make lots of more money than they would make back home, and they'll never speak up and question anything because they were poor in their home country, and then they came to America, and now they're living and they're making a doctor's salary in America. They're making six figures. And so they're not going to protest anything. They're not going to oppose any wars. And they're going to tell their kids, don't oppose anything. Don't rock the boat because we're doing pretty well here. Meanwhile, our own people get poorer and poorer and poorer. And we don't get the education and we don't get the skills. And so we lose. And Nigeria and India and Russia and China and Iran and countries like that lose. Yeah, it's an awful, awful setup. We don't educate our own people, and developing countries don't have the people they need. And we constantly import new professionals who are in this situation where they're making way more than they'd be making back home. So they keep their mouths shut. And it is a lose-lose situation. Brain drain. It's a disaster. Now, that's kind of what the fight in the Trump camp about the HB1 visas was about, right? Vivek Ramaswamy and Nick Fuentes were fighting about that. I don't think you can just immediately, right? And that was, some of the Trumpers were saying, let's immediately end the HB1 visa program. You can't do that, right? We don't have enough engineers in this country. We don't graduate enough engineers. It wouldn't work, right? Now, I would like to gradually start educating our own people. Yes, we need to start educating our own people. We need to get rid of brain drain. But what some of the Trumpers were saying is, oh, we'll just freeze all HB1 visas. And, you know, I mean, we do have a few Americans that are trained to be engineers. We do have a few Americans that are, you know, and it would be really good for them because they'd be in high demand very quickly. But no, you can't just, you know, completely overhaul it immediately. But yeah, the setup is awful. Look, what it really gets down to is our leaders in America are not loyal to America. They are loyal to an international system, imperialism, globalism, right? That's what they're loyal to. And that's what they send, you know, money all over the world to defend. That's what they send soldiers all over the world to defend. That's why they've dragged 80,000 Somalis to one city in Minneapolis. That's why, you know, we don't have doctors and engineers and scientists. We don't train our own people to be that. I mean, you go down the line. Our leaders are not loyal to America. They are loyal to globalism and imperialism, which is the outmoded rule of the world by big bankers and monopolies. And it's like the Roman Empire, right? The Roman Empire eventually fell, right? And we are going to fall if we continue, right? And that's why we're having events around the country on March 15th to talk about the death of Julius Caesar and all of this, right? And that this doesn't make me right wing, right? This is another thing, right? I mean, I don't care if I'm right wing, left wing, upwards, downwards, sideways, forward, you know, I don't care what I am at this point. I speak the truth. But, you know, for a long time, right, this was just how leftists talked. We talked about the global system of imperialism. But then around Obama's second term, suddenly they said, you can't say that. That's racist. You're right wing. No, we're not. I'm not against people from Africa or India. I'm not against them. I want them to have a prosperous life in their own country. You know, and if they want to move here, they should be able to, right? I don't have a problem with people immigrating here. But the fact that we have an economic system that makes it impossible for people to live in their own countries, that they find dead bodies along the border every day. Did you know that? Along the U.S. border with Mexico, they find corpses every day. Is that good? That's good that so many people can't live in Central America, that they die trying to cross the border. How is that good, right? You know, the right wing, they just have this xenophobic, oh, immigrants are smelly, immigrants are criminals. Well, that's not the answer, right? And everything that the right wing wants to do is going to make those problems worse, right? You know, if you make immigrant communities afraid to cooperate with police, those gangs are going to flourish. If you make it so people can't legally cross the border, how are they going to get into the United States? The coyotes, the illegal gangs are going to smuggle them into the United States. Right? Is it legal to pay an immigrant less than minimum wage? No. No matter in America, if you have an employee, you must pay the minimum wage. Doesn't matter where they're born, doesn't matter if they have a green card. But the reason that immigrants work for poverty wages is because they're not going to call the police on their employer. They're afraid to get deported. So all the stuff that Trump is doing against immigrants is making the problems worse. It's making immigrants work for less pay. It's making the criminal gangs in the immigrant communities flourish. It's making illegal smuggling across the border worse. But the problem is a problem. Mass migration is a problem. And brain drain, which is legal migration of professionals, the HB1 visa program, is part of the problem. Another part of the problem is illegal migration and people just fleeing to the United States and becoming a slave labor underclass, right? Both of those things are a problem. And you're not allowed to talk about them being a problem, right? All you're allowed to say on the left is, yay, this is the American dream, a nation of immigrants. Bullshit. It's not an American dream to find dead bodies along the Mexican border every day. That's not the American dream. You know, the drug cartels kidnapping people and slitting their throats. That is not the American dream. That is not the American dream. People working for poverty wages, right? All the wages going down because you're competing with people that are, no, this is not the American dream. It is not the American dream. And I'm not going to accept that just because that's politically correct. What, are you a Trumper? Are you a racist? You're racist. No, I'm not. I'm not racist. I'm just telling you that this bullshit setup that imperialism has created, where people are so desperately poor in Latin America because we've pumped those countries full of guns and weapons and drug gangs to fight communism, where people are dying trying to get out of there, that's a disaster. And it's a disaster for us. It's a disaster for everybody. And it's a disaster that we don't train our own people to be engineers and scientists. And it's also a disaster that in Nigeria, they don't have their own engineers and scientists. That in Russia, they don't, you know, the young people who get education at the expense of the Russian government flee to America, you know, and that's why they don't train us. It's a disaster setup. And we oppose that setup. It's called globalism imperialism. And it used to be that being a leftist meant you opposed it, right? Communists around the world, Ho Chi Minh and Fidel Castro, they were fighting this system. Now being a leftist means you defend this system against the right wing, against conservatives that are big meanies. Well, no, I'm not interested in defending this system. I'm not interested in defending this system, right? And I want to unite with working families to oppose it, right? And I believe the bulk of Americans want a government of action that fights for working families. That's what they want, right? And that, you know, I'm not going to accept a political movement that only wants to fight for abortion and transgender surgery for children and you know, and celebrating the crisis of mass migration. I want to fight for working families. I want to oppose the danger of a new world war. I want to oppose the emerging low-wage police state. I want to defend our freedom of speech and our right to protest. I want to oppose the Israel lobby, the satanic Israel lobby that has seized control of our government. Jeffrey Epstein was an Israeli agent, and everybody knows that. And it's not anti-Semitic. And no, Israel's not a puppet of U.S. imperialism. No, Israel, Zionism is a satanic force that, you know, was supported by the British Empire, was supported by American imperialism, and now has developed its own capacity. These things exist. And I'm tired of trying to appease and be part of political correctness. It is not my job to defend imperialism from conservatives, right? It is not my job. And that's why the left hates me. And I've broken with the so-called left. They're not socialists. They're not anti-imperialists. They're just defenders of the status quo. They are cry bullies. They are woke defenders of the status quo. And, you know, I believe in what they're supposed to believe in. If they would actually go read Marx and go read Lenin and go read Rosa Luxemburg, they would come to the conclusions that I've come to. But they don't read that. They read bumper stickers, right? They read bumper stickers. They watch Rachel Maddow, right? They follow whatever's trendy. And I'm not interested in that. I take this way too seriously. Way too seriously. I care too much about this to, you know, to let it go. I didn't risk my life on a ship in Yemen, you know, trying to deliver medical aid to Yemen because Trump is a big racist. No, I risked my life because the people of Yemen are fighting for their national liberation against the globalist imperialists and the Zionists. And they are striving to build a movement where the people come first and where they have economic development. That's what Hussein al-Houthi died for. And I wrote a book, Who Are the Houthis and What Are They Fighting For? Explaining that the American Revolution and John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry and our struggle against the British Empire was very much like what the Houthis are fighting for in Yemen, fighting against globalism and imperialism. And we distributed that book by the thousands across America. I wrote, you can listen to the audiobook of it. It's one of my great works, right? About who are the Houthis? What are they fighting for? Right. And I mean, I've been to Russia and I've been to Iran many times. I made a film about Iran. I've been to Venezuela. I understand this stuff. I understand what the global struggle against imperialism is. and the woke people do not. So that may be more than you asked for, Gabby, but I hope you liked it. And then David Fox sent a question. David said, isn't the confusion in politics just a reflection of the deepening crisis of imperialism, globalism? Yeah, I would say so. And what it is that you and I both remember, David, you're older than I am, that prior to the crisis, the financial crisis of 2008, but even a little bit after that, the left had its little corner where they could be leftist. They could still believe what you and I believe, but they were only allowed to be this tiny marginal aspect of US society, right? And then the fighting within the ruling class got so intense that they blew the left up. They let the left gain strength, but they had to purge it first so that nothing dangerous happened, right? There's divisions in the ruling class, Bonapartism, right? This is the capitalist crisis where the ruling class, they're fighting with each other. So they recruit working people to be their foot soldiers. And so for Bonapartist reasons, they built kind of a leftist movement, that was to fight against the new right as the ruling class were fighting. I've said many times before, the modern left is the result of, it started in the 1950s. The 1950s, the communist parties were very popular all across Western Europe. And even in America, they had substantial strength despite McCarthyism and everything, because they had fought against fascism, because the Soviet Union was 1/5 of the planet. And, it was the communist parties were quite popular. So in 1949, the CIA started funding Trotskyite intellectuals to do the Congress for Cultural Freedom and to start funneling money to socialists and leftists as long as they would talk against the communist parties and against the Soviet Union. And that's the origins of the new left. Hannah Arendt, Susan Sontag, Mary McCarthy, Theodore Adorno, all these names that, these people that kind of reinvented leftism, and they funded Jackson Pollock and they promoted drug use, Project MKUltra. They were distributing LSD, and that they created a new left as like a barrier against communism. That was stage one. Stage two was they sent the new left. They discovered that it was very useful in courting people within the Eastern Bloc, right? And that there was a new generation of people that had been born after the Russian Revolution, some of whom had even been born after World War II, a new generation of people in the Eastern Bloc, a lot of them the children of the party elite, who really loved American consumerism. They wanted to, drive American cars. They wanted to listen to Beatles music and wear blue jeans, and if you had gone to them and said, we want capitalism, and, they wouldn't have listened to you. But if you went to them and said, we share your grievances against the Marxist-Leninist governments, and we believe in socialism with a human face, democratic socialism. Dubček in Prague was a CIA operative who seized control of Czechoslovakia in 1968. He said he believed in socialism with a human face, right? And in Hungary in 1956, they said they were for democratic socialism. And that they sent these people, these Trotskyites, these new left intellectuals, to the Eastern Bloc, and they boosted what they called the reformist wing of the communist governments, right? And occasionally there would be an event like the Prague Spring or whatever, but it all led to 1989. You had the color revolutions that George Soros funneled the money, and they brought down the Eastern Bloc. And many of the people that protested to bring down the Marxist-Leninist parties, Gorbachev and others, they didn't understand that they were bringing in free market capitalism. They thought they would get to keep their guaranteed job, keep their guaranteed health care, but also be able to shop at Walmart and listen to Beatles music or whatever, right? And that there was an intelligence operation to infiltrate global communism and infect it with these kind of liberal, this kind of reinvented leftism. And that was stage two, was the color revolutions. 2008, when Obama became president, the color revolution apparatus came back to America. And, Occupy Wall Street, which I was part of, was kind of the first phase of this. But then later you had Black Lives Matter. And it appears now that George Soros, the color revolution apparatus that was sent around the world, has come back home as a Bonapartist fighting force for the ultra rich. And that's the case, that in order to, stabilize capitalism, they have to push back the lower levels of capital, right? The wealthy capitalists who just want to make money, the monopolists. And in order to do that, they've built this movement of young NGO-cialists, right? NGOs, right? Young people who work at nonprofits and NGOs, young people who listen to social media and are brainwashed by social media, who, it is just their job to go and enforce the will of the ultra rich in the name of wokeism, in the name of social justice, right? And it's very sad. And universities have completely changed. During the cold, my family always told me, Caleb, you're going to love college. You're going to just thrive in college. Well, I didn't. I did not thrive in college. I hated it because my parents were from the Cold War generation. And during the Cold War, most Americans had the attitude of America's the greatest country in the world. If you don't like it here, move to another country, etc. But the universities were this little enclave where people thought, and they read publications from around the world. They learned about Marxism. They questioned the American system. That's how universities were during the Cold War. Now it's the opposite. Now the average people in America are thinking. They're listening to podcasts. They're mad about Israel. They're mad about the wars. They're mad at the government. They're mad that their living standards are going down. They're mad that their freedoms are being taken away. And so average Americans are questioning things. So the university system is where you get vetted to make sure you're a good little obedient, mind-conforming person. And you go into the university system, and if you are just obedient enough and all of that, then when you get out of the university system and you've got your degree that's pretty worthless in, English or political science or philosophy, you've got your little degree that doesn't get you a job. If you're really, really good, you're just one of the most obedient little shits out there. If you're just a little conforming, nattering nabob, right? If you're just a little nattering nabob who just, just never questions anything, right? Teacher, teacher. He asked a question. If you're a little tattletale, nattering nabob, suck up, non-thinking conformist, then they reward you with one of these jobs at I don't know, at Planned Parenthood or at the Trans Liberation Foundation or the Sylvia Rivera Law Project or the Center for Constitutional Rights or one of these liberal groups. And you work there, and your job is to be America's politically correct police. The big job at the universities now, you got to love this, is the what do they call it? The social justice consultant. Like, this is crazy, but all the universities now have to hire somebody whose job it is to make sure that they have enough gay people and trans people and people of color and women. And they have like a job, a desk, and someone who gets paid a six-figure salary to just go around the college making sure no one thinks, making sure the college doesn't do anything that could be interpreted as conservative. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. But it's a job they all want now. They all want to be, the University of Pennsylvania. They have to hire, somebody who's, the University of Ohio, the University of Tennessee. They all want to be, they all have somebody on staff whose job it is to be the political correctness. I mean, it's funny. This is kind of like what they used to say about communist countries. In communist countries, every factory had a political commissar whose job it was to make sure that everybody in the factory believed in communism. Well, now every university has a political commissar whose job it is to go around and make sure everyone at the university is totally woke. And, I mean, it's absolutely, absolutely ridiculous. I think they call it a diversity, equity, inclusion specialist, is what the DEI specialist. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, again, I was always somebody who sympathized, and I still do. I mean, somebody is struggling with their gender identity. If someone, a teenager or a child, is feeling that they're the opposite gender, that sucks, and I sympathize with them, okay? I really do, and I don't want them to be bullied, and I don't want their parents to not accept them, and, I don't know what's best for them because I'm not a medical professional, and I don't know what they need, but I also don't think that they should be, competing in sports, that are, with people of the gender that is contrary to theirs. I don't think, they should have wrestling competitions where a boy who is struggling with his gender takes on a female, right? And I don't think that on top of that, I mean, there's many things. I don't think rape survivor groups should be required to allow, that are for women only, should be required to allow, a man who, identifies as a woman to join, right? This has gone nuts. It's gone too far. And I learned, if you watch the early videos on this channel, I learned the hard way. You will never please these people. Never. You will never please these people. Right? I tried so hard to please these people. I said I have nothing against trans people. It's never enough. No matter what you do, it is never enough for these people. Unless you become one of them. You become a disgusting woke baiter yourself and give up anti-imperialism and give up any populism, and you just become one of their whistleblowing tattletales. It will never be enough for them, right? It'll never be enough for them. So stop trying. And that's my message. Stop trying. You will never please these people unless you abandon the good fight to oppose imperialism and colonialism. It'll never, 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 never be enough for them. Now, Gabby sent another question, right? And I will answer that actually, but I do want to give people a chance, since people are asking questions tonight. People are on fire asking questions, and I appreciate it. So I will remind you, if you want to send a question, buy me a coffee. We're past the second hour, which is good, right? And I've got plenty of energy. It's not even midnight yet, right? So if you want to send another question, buy me a coffee is a great way to do it. And I will put on, this is another Chinese communist song that I really like. This is called The Golden Mountain in Beijing. It's a beautiful Tibetan melody that the Chinese communists kind of made their own. I love this song, absolutely. So this is Golden Mountain in Beijing. And we'll listen to that while people send their next question. So here we go. Yeah, that's a great song. That's an absolutely great song. So yeah, I do want to remind people, if you have any more questions, Rumble Rants, Caleb Oppen 22 on Cash App. The best way to do it is buy me a coffee. People have been asking great questions tonight. Keep it coming. Let's keep going. Let's keep being lively here. We still got Gabby's next question to answer, but before we do that, I'm going to give people one more chance to send a question. I'm going to put on an Irish song, a Gaelic song, an Irish liberation song, which I believe the translation to the lyrics is "Welcome Home, Warriors." It's like a celebrating the warriors as they come home. So it's a Gaelic song. This is a group of Irish people singing it. Here we go.
Oro Shinova, Owaria, Oro Shinova, Owaria, Oro Shinova, Owaria, Nishar Haktantare, Shinova, Havambale, the Bea, Gratuve, the Huga, Ezelif, Miglas, Tilta, Leshnagara, Oro Shinova, Owaria, Oro Shinova, Owaria,
Yeah, that's a great song. Very, very lively. Very, very lively song. I love that song. All right. So Gabby's question was, what books on Chavismo in Venezuela would I recommend? I have a couple here. This is probably the best book that I've found on the subject. And this is about the movement. It's called We Created Chavez: A People's History of the Venezuelan Revolution. And I really recommend this book because it has in-depth interviews with the people that led the movement in Venezuela. And it's by an American professor who went down to Venezuela. He did all kinds of like in-depth interviews with Bolivarian socialists and about how they built the movement. And I've been down there. I've been to communes in central Caracas and other things. So I've seen it myself to some degree, but this is like an academic work that just interviews and shows you who made the movement that created Hugo Chavez. I would recommend this, right? There's a writer named Marta Harnecker, and she was kind of the ideologue of Bolivarianism in Latin America. And I have one of her books somewhere, Marta Harnecker. Marta Harnecker. And she's a communist. She died, but she was kind of she's Chilean, of Chilean descent, and she died, but she was one of the main ideologues of 21st century socialism and Bolivarianism. This is her book, A World to Build, New Paths Toward 21st Century Socialism. And she has a lot in here about where Chavez came from, what the Bolivarian revolutions intend to do. It's very, very in-depth, right? And stuff you want to get like theoretical. This is not, this book is interviewing people about what it's like and, how they built the revolution, etc. Right? This is more about like the ideology and the strategy, how they came to power, what they were trying to do. Marta Harnecker. I do have, like, for example, this is just a Venezuelan government book. It's called The Fascist Coup Against Venezuela, right? And this is just, them documenting how it was that the USA tried to overthrow the Venezuelan government in 2002. And it's like speeches by Hugo Chavez about the coup attempt and stuff. But ultimately, right, I mean, I have to say that I think that if you really want just straight up information, I always just try to have as many facts as possible, and so if you want just straight up information about Venezuela, I would have to recommend our book on it, right? CPI has published my writing on Venezuela. The Siege Has Failed: Why Venezuela Stands Against Globalism and Imperialism. And, that book is available widely. And, the cover, maybe some people think the cover is hokey, and they may be right. Maybe we could have done a better job with the cover. I don't know. But, that book, it has a lot. It has an article that I wrote for Mint Press News that was widely circulated. It has the presentation I gave about oil price manipulation in Brazil. It has a lot of stuff. So hold on, I'm putting the link in the chat, right? The Siege Has Failed, right? That's my book on Venezuela. It includes my own experiences when I was down there, articles I've written for RT.com about Venezuela. It's a lot in here. And, this book is my experience and my writing when it comes to Venezuela, including like events. I wrote, I would go for a while. I was on the list of the Venezuelan consulate or the UN mission of Venezuela. And whenever they would have an event, I would go there and I would write articles about what I saw there, for the RT website and stuff like that. So yeah, that book, obviously I would recommend my own work as being the ideal piece when it comes to Venezuela, but there you go. All righty. So yeah, when you come to writing on Venezuela, there we go. Oh, we have another coffee. It's come in. Penny says, China has a cool lunar mission. All right. Well, I am all about space travel and the space program. And she sent a video of China's lunar mission. So thank you for that, Penny. We'll put that video on. If anyone else has any more questions, please send them in. We're getting towards the third hour, so I'm probably going to start winding things down. But but if you've got something for the second half of the show, or you've got something for me to talk about here, it'll be great to send it in. I'll probably be on tomorrow night. Don't see why I wouldn't be. So but let me. Yeah. So if you've got something for the next half of the show, or if you got something for me to talk about now, please send a Rumble rant or send a buy me a coffee. That's the best way to do it, is to send a buy me a coffee. Go to CalebMoppin/buy me a coffee and send it in. And I'll keep going. If questions keep coming in, right, I'll keep going. So please, send questions via buy me a coffee if you can. Buy me a coffee is good stuff. So, all right. So, we're going to put on the lunar mission of China. This is very, very interesting. So this is China's lunar mission, video sent in by Penny. So yeah, here we go. This is from Chinese television. Here we go.
Why is this in-flight escape test seen as a major challenge? What does it mean for China's future lunar program? Welcome to Hot Take. This is Wu Lei. We are about 3.5 kilometers away from the newly built lunar launch pad at Wenchang Space Launch Site. The rocket entered maximum dynamic pressure, the most dangerous phase of ascent. At that moment, an abort signal was sent to the Mengzhou spacecraft. After separating modules and firing engines, Mengzhou spacecraft deployed parachutes and landed safely in the targeted sea area, marking a fully successful test flight. Both the new Long March 10 rocket and Mengzhou spacecraft are designed for China's crewed and deep space missions. This test was essential to verify key safety technologies that protect astronauts in the event of an emergency during launch. Take a look at this beautiful mission patch for the Mengzhou in-flight abort test. At the center are the escape tower and the Mengzhou spacecraft with deployed parachutes and capsule, and the auspicious cloud and phoenix motifs symbolize resilience and renewal. But beyond this symbolism, this mission set 5 major firsts in the history of China's space exploration. It marked the first ignition flight of the Long March 10, a newly developed heavy-lift rocket designed to carry technauts to lunar orbit. It was also China's first ever in-flight abort test for the spacecraft. Other firsts include the sea recovery of a crewed spacecraft return capsule, the sea landing of the rocket's first stage, and the maiden mission of Wenchang's new lunar launch pad. Such a complicated and challenging mission requires close coordination among different systems. China aims to send its technauts to the moon by 2030. These scientists and engineers are working around the clock to make the new rocket, new spacecraft, and other key systems ready for the crewed lunar mission. This test not only enhances safety, but also marches solid steps toward the moon and deeper space.
Very cool. Very, very cool. I'm a huge fan of the space program. You know, I really am. And yeah, I think that's awesome. That is very cool. That is very, very cool. So, hey, I just wanted to throw this out. I generally only respond to questions, but someone in the chat is talking about the Bellamy salute. Okay. The Bellamy salute it's not the same as the Nazi salute because your hand is like this, right? Edward Bellamy is an American socialist writer. We actually quote him in the City Builders book. We have his parable of the water tank, which explains overproduction, right? It's in here is, it's a short story that he wrote in kind of using biblical language because he was a very religious guy, and it's called the parable of the water tank, right? It's in, where is it? The parable of the water tank. It's section 2.2 on page 120 of the City Builder Manual. We actually have Edward Bellamy's parable of the water tank, which is like a little socialist story that he wrote, which is, it's good stuff. I recommend it. But his cousin, Francis Bellamy, was a Baptist minister who was also a socialist. And he was a pastor in Boston, and he gave sermons against capitalism. And so they banned him from preaching in the city of Boston. So he moved to Florida. And in Florida, he also was banned from preaching because he wouldn't preach to racially segregated congregations. And in Florida at that point, they had a law that congregations, you had to have the black area and the white area, and he refused to comply with that. He was a great guy in many, many ways, Francis Bellamy. And Francis Bellamy is the guy who wrote the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance. And he wrote it because he was a very strong advocate for black freedom and black civil rights. And he was also the owner of a flag company. And so he had this idea to have a Pledge of Allegiance, that every school classroom in America could have a flag. And public education was a new thing at that point. And it was in the South, they didn't have schools for kids in the South until the overthrow of slavery, right? You didn't have public education until Reconstruction. So they were just starting to have public schools all across America. So he had the idea that every school would have a flag in it, and that to make sure that nothing like the Confederacy ever happened again, they would have all the kids pledge loyalty to the United States. And they took the words to the Pledge of Allegiance. The words to the Pledge of Allegiance are from the oaths that Confederate soldiers had to take in order to get their voting rights back. They allowed, it is in the Constitution, you can lose your voting rights if you ever engaged in insurrection against the American government. But they started letting former Confederate soldiers vote on the grounds that they take an oath. And so the Pledge of Allegiance is basically an anti-Confederate oath. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, not two, indivisible, no secession, with liberty, no slaves, and justice, no slaves, for all, everybody, i.e. no slaves. That's what the Pledge of Allegiance was. Now, the under God part was not added until the 1950s, and it was the Knights of Columbus, which is a Roman Catholic fraternal organization. They had a petition to add under God to the Pledge of Allegiance. But anyway, so when they created the Pledge of Allegiance, right, they didn't originally have the kids do this, right, because they didn't have the kids put their hands over their hearts. They had their kids extend their hands toward the flag, right? So it's not the same as the Hitler salute. The Hitler salute, your hand is, it's the hand is like this for the Hitler salute. I'm not going to do that on here, but the Bellamy salute is like this. The hand is like this. It's upside down. And they would say, extend your hands towards the flag. And it's not straightforward. It's towards the flag, right? It's towards the flag. I'm trying to not have it look like a Hitler salute. But your palm is up when you do the Bellamy salute, and it's towards the flag. From a distance, a bunch of kids with their hands out straight forward looked a lot like, what Adolf was doing. So they changed it. And during World War II, they changed it so that the kids did this. And it was, if you're in the military, you salute during the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you're a kid, you do this. And you do the same for the national anthem when they play it at the football game. That's where it comes from. Right. Now, a couple things. First of all, I know a lot about this, but I'm a smart guy. But no, I've talked about this in salute. The Roman salute. Yes, we're getting that. Hold your horses. I'm getting there. Hold your horses. Right. So the Hitler salute comes from what's called the Roman salute. Right. And nobody knows, because nobody lived in ancient Rome, but Romans would greet each other by saying, Awe, hail Caesar, right? And I'm not quite sure what Awe means, but Awe, hail Caesar is how they would greet each other, right? And it appears that they either, well, I'm not going to demonstrate for you, but they either did what the Italian fascists did, or they did what Hitler was doing. They did one of those two, right? Now apparently some people say the Romans would hit their chest and then do it. So it wasn't from the brow. It was, they would hit their chest. Like there was like a chest pump, and then the arm was extended, and it was Awe, hail Caesar. And then the arm would go out. Now that was called the Roman salute. And, throughout the Middle East, people have been doing that for thousands of years. Actually, like, the Syrian military did that. The Iranian military has done that since, like for thousands of years. It was just in that part of the world, no, you're wrong. Okay. You're wrong. The Bellamy salute is palm up, and it's extending towards the flag. Listen to what I'm saying. It's extending towards the flag. It's not straightforward. And it's your palm is up. Okay. The Roman salute, no one really knows how it's done. But it ends with your arm extended. That's how it ends. Okay. Your arm is extended. Okay. Now the Romans apparently, though, before they did it, they thumped their chest first, which the Nazis didn't do. They didn't thump their chest and say, Awe. It was, you thumped your chest and you said, Awe, and then you extended your arm in a way that I'm not going to do and said, Hail Caesar, right? And the Nazis, they didn't thump their chest. They just extended their arm and said, Heil, you know who. So, that's the important thing there. But the other thing, while we're talking about the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm waiting, if anyone has any more questions, please send them in. Oh, somebody did. David sent a question in. The other thing that is important about the Pledge of Allegiance, right? And I said it. We said it every day when I was in school. When I was in elementary school, we said it every day. When I was in high school, we said it once a week. But a lot of kids do it every day. In Texas, I think they make them do it every day. And they have the Texas Pledge. In Texas, they have their own pledge for the state of Texas, which I don't know. That's crazy. I don't know how that's legal, but whatever. Right? They have the Texas Pledge and the Pledge of Allegiance. And they do both every day. I don't know how they do that. Texas is something different. But in America, when I grew up, we did the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we started the day. When I was in elementary school, we did the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. And then when I was in first grade, my first grade teacher played the piano. So after we did the Pledge of Allegiance, she would play and she would sit there at the piano and, my country, 'tis of the sweet land of liberty. And we would do that every morning too. I don't know. She just wanted to show off her piano skills, or I don't know, whatever. That was my first grade teacher. She was, I guess, very patriotic, or that's just what they did back in the day. Sometimes I feel like I went to school in like the 1800s, but it's like, I remember that at that elementary school I went to, we watched films on a projector, right? They did have VHS tapes at that point, but there were only like 2 TVs with a VHS. So sometimes we watched films on a projector. I remember we watched a film about how to brush your teeth on a projector. Anyway, I could tell you a million stories about growing up in small town, rural area. But anyway, you know, I mean, the elementary school I went to was not Orville, by the way. I went to Dalton Elementary School, and Dalton shares a high school with another district. It's like a tiny little Mennonite town that I went to elementary school in. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, so the other thing about the Pledge of Allegiance is that now we have the phrase under God in it, right? Where did that come from, right? Well, it came from the Knights of Columbus had a petition. We want to add under God to the Pledge of Allegiance so that people don't think we're godless communists or whatever. But that comes from the Gettysburg Address, right? On the Gettysburg Address, Abraham Lincoln, he said, you know, that one nation under God with liberty and justice for all shall not perish from the earth, or something like that. What is it? What's the Gettysburg Address? What does he say that, you know, it's in the Gettysburg Address, right? Gettysburg Address, right? It's a very short speech that Abraham Lincoln gave, right? It's a very, very short speech. The words of it are like, it's like a paragraph, right? Yeah, you know, it's very famous. You know, that was another thing they would make kids memorize in school was the Gettysburg Address, right? It's very short. It goes like this. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those here who gave their lives that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget that they did what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion, that the cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion, that we have here highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall give a new birth of freedom, and that the government of, by, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Right? That's the Gettysburg Address. Now, it has in it, it says, you know, the line is that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. Now, here's the thing, right? The Gettysburg Address, right? At the time, what he was saying was, if you look at the context, he's saying inshallah, right? He's not saying that this nation is blessed by God. No, he's saying that at the time they were fighting a big civil war. And he's saying, if God wills it, if we win, then we'll have a new birth of freedom because all the slaves will be free, right? And he's saying that this nation under God, like if God wills it, like, you know, God willing, shall have a new birth of freedom, because at the time that was contested. They were still in a war with the South. It's not a statement that this country should have a religious government, which is how many people have interpreted it. They've said, well, Lincoln was saying that we have to have a religious government. That's not actually what he was saying. You know, that's not what he was saying. He was saying that you know, that if God wills it, we'll stay together and have a new birth of freedom. And that's an important point that gets forgotten a lot. Okay. Can I suggest you include something from CGTN showing China's accomplishments and optimisms on your live streams? They are positive. I would agree. I mean, and Penny's been great about that. Penny sends me a lot of those videos of China's accomplishments, and you know, I mean, there are some like skyline videos, like, you know, that I think are really awesome. Skyline. Shanghai time lapse. Yeah, this might be good. I like the Shanghai skyline from 1978 to 2019. This is a really good video of China's accomplishments, right? You know, you ever want a question of like what socialism has achieved in China, what socialism with Chinese characteristics has achieved, take a look at this. This is amazing what I'm about to show you. But yeah, so yeah, hold on for that. I do have a video to show on that. I will show you the Shanghai skyline video is just amazing. You want to see China's achievements, look at that. So yeah, we're just waiting for it. It's queued for processing, so hold your horses. We're just waiting for that video. But yeah, hey, we're getting close to the 3rd hour, but that's good. You know, that's good. You know, keep me on here, being active and all of that. You know, hey, shout out to anybody who's having a lonely Valentine's Day. You know, tomorrow is Valentine's Day, and if you have lost a loved one, either to death or whatever, or if you are single, it sucks for you. And honestly, I'm married, you know, my wife and I are going to have a nice dinner, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's kind of a dumb holiday, right? And the ads that they have for Valentine's Day are kind of cringe. I will say, you know, why is it that Valentine's Day is suddenly all about sex toys? Right? Like when I was growing up, Valentine's Day was about hearts and candy and all that, but suddenly they've made Valentine's Day, like suddenly all over New York City, they have ads for sex toys everywhere. It's like Valentine's Day is the day you buy sex toys. Like, what the hell? Like, you know, when did we become a pornographic, you know, country? You know, I mean, I honestly, you know, I'm not thrilled by Valentine's Day either, but I know it's particularly hard for people that are perhaps lonely, right, on Valentine's Day. So I really do think that, that Valentine's Day is really not my favorite holiday, to tell you the truth. I mean, you know, I remember before I got married, you know, I was often very lonely on Valentine's Day. And even now I look at Valentine's Day, I walk into the stores and I look at all the billboards in New York City and it's like, I still want to puke. It's just not, ugh, you know what I mean? It's just like, you know, I have my life, I have my wife, we're married, we're happy, but like, we don't need to flaunt it before the world. We don't need to, it's like this weird, and now it's also super sexual too, right? That's the other thing. Valentine's Day is now about sex, right? And I don't get that either, right? It didn't used to be about sex. It used to be about romance. And even that was like weird, but now it's, you know, it's this. And then, do they still do Sweetest Day? I didn't even know what Sweetest Day was. It was like they made another Valentine's Day to make money. And I was just like, this is dumb, right? So I don't know. Who knows? You know, who knows? There's no love anywhere. Oh, well, you know, but hey, you know, it really is. And that, you know, a lot of people are single. A lot of people, you know, and even, I mean, it's just, you know, can I not erase that? Erase what? Anyway, I'm waiting for this video. This Shanghai video to show you. Just waiting for the video. Oh, goodness gracious. It says system is currently doing maintenance. All right, so we'll do the other one. Oh, well, that's, hold on. Hold your horses, as they say. Hold your horses. All right. We're going to get this Shanghai skyline video that is really exhilarating and awesome. We're going to get it on the screen. I'm checking that I'm not a robot. Not a robot. All right. Oh, and it looks like we're going to get it. Okay. All righty. All right. Hold on. All right. Cool. Yeah, this is the Shanghai skyline. All right. It's 1 minute and 50 seconds showing you what China has achieved, showing you what socialist central planning has achieved, right? So yeah, this is, if you haven't seen this already, this is amazing. This is from 1979 to today. This is Shanghai. Yeah. There you go. There you go. That is the Shanghai skyline. That is absolutely amazing. And yeah. City building tendency, brother. City builders. There you go. And I could post the link in the chat, right? Here's the link. That is some innovationism for you. Dare to struggle, dare to win. Dare to struggle, dare to win. That's great stuff, folks. So there you go. Yes, they built some stuff. They built themselves some stuff. They sure did that thing. But all right. Well, listen, folks, I will be back tomorrow night. Saturday night is a really big night. I try to never miss a Saturday because Saturday is a big night on this channel. So yeah, should be good. So, if you want to grab a copy of my new book, I do intend to read it all on this channel as an audiobook. So that's coming up as soon as I can get my hands on a print copy, which I have not seen the print copy yet. So I intend to read it out loud on this channel. So order a copy if you get a chance. I hope you like it. I got one more episode with Academic Agent that's going to air, and I'll start posting those on here after they're done on his channel. But we did one about Stalin earlier this week, and so we're going to get those out soon. And good times, folks. So thanks for being loyal members of our community. Join the Center for Political Innovation. We need some new members. Dare to struggle, dare to win. There we go. All right. Well, listen, folks, I'm going to say goodnight for now. So I'm going to put on the closing music, and we'll be back tomorrow night. We'll be back. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.